Oh, that's like. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks. Okay, 8:59. So if you're here for Ignite contract to close, you're in the right spot. But I usually give it a couple of minutes so people that are getting off of other calls have a chance to hop on. Hey, Robert.
Hi.
Okay, just set my alarm so I remember to take a break. So, can you guys see the presentation?
No,
Oh
I
boy.
see you.
Okay. How about now? All right, okay, that wasn't so bad. I know we'll have a few more people hopping on here. So was it the financial section yesterday? Is that what they did? Oh, that's a good one. How was it? It was good. Did Matt Erdman teach that one?
Tim
No?
Shea and Mark Casson.
Oh, it's a good module. It's such a good reminder on
Yes.
managing our money when we're 100% commissioned, and it's so easy when the check comes in to just like spend it before realizing that you're going to have other responsibilities to do with that. All right. Tim, I just made you co-host there.
I don't want that responsibility. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
I
Sure,
noticed you didn't
sure.
ask for me to.
No, yeah, no, I'm speak when spoken to. Yes, ma'am.
Cool. All right, well, it is 9:02, so we might as well just jump right in and get started. So if you are here for Ignite Contract to Close, you're in the right spot. My name is Susan Kenyon, and I work out of the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Market Center 463, and I am licensed in New Hampshire and Maine. I've had my license since 2013. And when I teach Ignite, I teach from the perspective of production. When I get up and I get ready to go to work every day, my husband and I are both agents. We're getting ready to leave the house, and I say, let's go make some money today. And I say it really just about every single day, because when I step out the door, that is where my mindset goes. I'm going to work and I'm here to make some money. So that's where my background comes from, and that's what my flavor of teaching is going to be about today. It's about, the contract to close, which is also one of my favorite pieces of the business. I just really love contract to close, and we'll get into all the reasons why contract to close is so important for your future business. And so my husband and I both work out of New Hampshire and Maine, and we're up here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And thank you for Tim and Robert, who are here with me from Portsmouth as well. Do you want to introduce yourself, Tim?
Sure. Tim Lindsay, productivity coach for 463. Like Sue said, we're in Portsmouth is our market center, and our footprint goes up to North Conway and over to Wells and over to Sunapee. And we're opening up Papua New Guinea next week. I'm joking. I don't know what Nate's up to anymore. So who knows? So we do have license. We actually did. I missed out on this. We actually did just gain our brokerage in Vermont, because we have enough agents in Western New Hampshire that want to jump across the state line and service there as well. So with 775 talented souls on board, if you need a referral, don't be afraid to reach out to us. And of course, like Dr. Kenyon said, her and her husband are in New Hampshire and Maine. So she's phenomenally talented. You're in the right place for sure. I give you guys kudos for being here on the 18th session. After chicken giving, people are like, oh, real estate. I'm going to go take a nap, eat some turkey muffins. So phenomenally talented instructor you have today. So take copious notes. There'll be a quiz at 12. I'm joking.
Thanks, Tim. And I did just put my information in the chat. If you guys ever need anything, I'm always happy to help, and I'm so happy to see some familiar faces there. So and thank you, Robert. Robert, you want to introduce yourself really quick? We have Robert. You guys are so lucky to have him on this call, on this class today.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know how lucky they are. I'm still getting my gears rolling this morning.
Somebody's going to ask you about that tree behind you. You need to tell them it's actually real. It's from Trader Joe's. That is
It's 100%.
Oh, I love those.
It's a real Grinch. It's like an actual tree, but it looks like a Grinch tree. But that you can.
And the
plant
question
that.
is it really behind me?
Oh, no, it's probably a green screen. So the most talented market center tech trainer on the planet, Robert Benson, everybody.
Oh, I feel like I should be, like some curtains opening or something, but absolutely not. Yes, I am the Market Center technical trainer here at 463 in the Portsmouth Market Center. And my role here is to help everybody get comfortable with their tech and solve any problems that they might encounter, and train them on how to use best practices. I work in the region, obviously, so I'm part of the region, so I'm happy to help when I can. We do have a regional tech trainer, Brooke Silva, who is absolutely amazing. So under her leadership, we have really good Market Center technical trainers. If you have not reached out to your Market Center technical trainer yet, please do so, especially as new agents coming on board. They can be an absolute lifeline for you to get yourself connected to things, to make sure everything's functioning the way it is, and most importantly, to help you learn how to use the software that we're talking about here today, and all the software that's available to you with best practices in mind. And I'll actually kind of throw something out there. If another agent tells you how you should be doing something, check with your MCTT first before you implement it that way, because many times the MCTTs will have the best way to do things for you. So although you absolutely will learn from other agents, and I encourage you to do so, if somebody suggests to do things a certain way, check with your MCTT. They probably can verify it or put you on the right path. That's one of the things we do here, is try to make it so that what you do is in your best interest, and makes it, we try to make it as easy as possible for you guys to take the tech and move it to the side, and it becomes part of your business, but it doesn't become the focus of your business, and you can focus on actually doing your business. So that's one of the main things that I do here, and I'm happy to help anybody who has any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. So today, we are going to be talking about contract to close. I love participation, so I appreciate the videos that are all on so that I can see your faces. Please feel free to interrupt with any questions or comments as we move through today's presentation. If you put your digital hand up, I will do my very best to see it, but I sometimes get focused on what I'm talking about and don't see it. So feel free to just jump right in and unmute yourself as well.
And I'll be
You can
watching the chat as we
Oh,
go
thank
through
you.
here. And if you have any questions and you want to put them in the chat rather than raising your hand, make sure to just, pop it in there. And the chat is open for me right now. So in doing so, I'll keep an eye on that. And then if you're not going to interrupt, then I will.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. And I do want to just remind everybody that I am going to speak in as general terms as I can today, because we do have a lot of different states here. And in every session, it's important to remember that we have different rules and regulations, but really with contracts, we want to make sure that we're adhering to the compliance within our states that we're practicing in. So I'm licensed in New Hampshire and Maine, so that kind of tends to be where I'm coming from, but I'll try to keep the specifics of a state requirement out of the language that we're using today. But contracts is definitely no place to have a guessing game. If you have a question with your contracts, then please go to your leadership and make sure that you're doing those correctly. And congratulations is what I always say when I'm getting under contract with someone. It's such a huge step. You've done so much work to get to this point, right? We've seen this slide every time during Ignite. And what I love about Ignite is that Keller Williams went out to the most successful agents and said, "What do you do every day to be successful?" And this is what they do. They compiled that list. There was common denominators for everybody that is super successful. This is what they do. So why do we need to recreate the wheel? We don't. This is what we need to do. So we follow this roadmap, right? And at this point, when we're heading into contract to close, you've done so much work on the left side of this screen. You've lead generated for buyers and sellers. You've made listing presentations. You've made buyer presentations. You've previewed real estate. You've gotten those contracts signed. And then when you do that, you get the privilege of being able to go over to running your business. But when we talk about running our business, which is really where we are with being in contract to close today, remember that this is what successful agents do every day. So they never stop doing the left side of the screen. It's just now that you have contracts, now you have a little bit more to incorporate, which is you market your seller listings and you go shopping with your buyers. And then we get under contract. And today we're going to focus on number 3 here: negotiate contracts, transaction management to closing, vendor management. Those pieces are so important to really nail the expectation, the compliance, the communication, so that we're moving forward with either our buyer or our seller to give them a phenomenal experience. And in running your business, you're going to be setting goals like, how many transactions do I want to do in 2022? How many families do I want to help? How many calls am I going to make every day? How many appointments am I going to go on? Okay. And compliance and risk management, super important. I happen to love contracts. I'm one of those people, but I still go to contracts class. If there's contracts class and I can get to it, my seat is taken. I go to it all the time. I participate and I learn. So I'm always learning about compliance and risk management. And we attend trainings and get coaching just like you guys are doing today. And of course, we have to manage our money, which is important now that we're talking about contract to close, because now we're going to have a commission check coming in. And I had learned this analogy in a class that I took, the perfect real estate assistant. And I don't know if they still call it that with Monica Reynolds, or if they call it something else, but if you see it coming to an area near you, take it. Whether you are the assistant or you've just never taken it because you're running your business, if you haven't taken it, you really should take it. It's a phenomenal course on setting up your systems. But Monica Reynolds talks about contract to close as if it's the dessert. And that what she's talking about there is if you are celebrating a really big event in your life and you're going to go out to a really fancy dinner, you're going to go with, probably your most favorite person, your spouse or your best friend. You're going to get dressed up. You're going to pick your favorite restaurant that you don't get to go to very often. You're going to park. There's going to be a valet. The service when you get inside is going to be phenomenal. The cocktails are going to be great. The food is going to be wonderful. And you're smiling the whole time as you're celebrating whatever you're there for. And then they wheel out the dessert cart and it's beautiful. And you pick your favorite dessert and you're having just such a great time, the time of your life. And they bring out your dessert and they put that plate in front of you. And there's a fly on the plate. We
You're the
can't let
worst. You just ruined everyone's morning.
Wow, you just completely
Did I
destroyed
sell
everything that was
it?
going on in my head.
Good night, everybody. Have a great week. Try the veal. Really?
Oh,
Oh,
Right.
Moses.
you're killing me. I was totally ready to have a nice meal, and then you. Oh.
I was waiting for you to tell me the cart was made of chocolate. I was going to order the whole thing. Yeah. They brought out 12
Perfect. Did I
desserts
get
and
it
you
right?
said yes.
God, what a downer.
What a downer. So if contract to close doesn't go well, guess what? It's the fly on the plate. So when you go after that experience, say there was no fly on the plate, and you go onto Facebook the next day, or you're talking to your friends the next day, you're telling them about how awesome that experience was and what a great time you had. If there's a fly on the plate, you're telling them about the fly. So what do you think is going to happen when you do not give your client the best possible experience from contract to close? You've done so much work just to get the contract, lead generating, getting the appointment, getting the agency agreement signed, showing the house, negotiating the contract, working with that other co-broke, getting under contract. You need that contract to close to be a phenomenal experience because it's part of lead generation. We have the opportunity to get repeat business and referrals so much more during the contract to close phase than in any other part of our business. So be the best dessert possible after that meal. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And how to give your client the best experience. Because really, when we've been talking during Ignite, it's communication and relationship, right? I've hijacked this from Tim a long time ago that we're in the relationship business until they have a real estate need. And that is so true. So we stay in relationship this whole time, and especially during contract to close. So let's talk about that. Today's agenda, we are going to build the buyer and seller timelines because it is very different. There's a lot of similarities, but there's some important differences between working with a buyer under contract or working with a seller under contract, and best practices for managing the deal. And then our tools for command for transaction management. But we are going to start with building the buyer and seller timelines. what we need to do here is we need to be conscious of where a deal can fall apart and how to avoid that, and how to use, our tools to make sure that the deal doesn't fall apart. I find right now, like, people, in the market, when we're talking to the general public, they're like, wow, the market is so hot. You must be crushing it. The market might be hot, but it is so much more work to keep a deal together now than it ever has been since I've had my license. So keeping those deals together is really important, and it means time on task. I love that, Robert.
That was a mistake.
So let's talk about building a buyer timeline. When we're talking about a timeline for anyone, we really have to look at what their perspective is, and we start with setting expectations, right? So from the buyer's perspective, they're super excited right now. You just went under contract. You got to make that call saying, congratulations, you are under contract. They're going to start flipping out most likely, especially if in this current market where buyers may have missed out on properties, they may have written offers and not gotten them. You're giving them great news. So now we need to keep them on task. And we do that with a buyer timeline because they're just excited. They want to start getting on the phone and on social media and telling everyone that they're under contract for their perfect home. So we start with an executed contract. And here we really need to make sure that it's executed correctly. When we're talking about contract to close, we're going to talk about a buyer and seller perspective. But when I'm working contract to close, I drive in both directions. I like to be the person in charge of the transaction for both sides because I need to give my buyer the best experience. I need to make sure that that co-broke for the seller is doing their job and keeping their seller in line with what they need to have done. We can't assume that the co-broke is doing their job to the level that we're doing our job. So we want to make sure that the contract is executed correctly. Do we have all the signatures? Do we have all the initials? Is it dated correctly? Do we know what our dates are in the contract? Do we know when escrows are due and when inspection contingencies are due and whatever other time sensitive contingencies that are built into the contract? Are we keeping track of those with our executed contract? Because remember, part of our, job is knowing our contracts, right? Do you guys practice contracts in your market centers? Does anybody have an under contract right now? Well, cool. This is a great time then for us to be learning ahead of time what to do as soon as you get them under. So part of our timeline here is working with our lender. So this should not be the first time you're talking to the lender. By the time we are under contract, you should have had many conversations with the lender about your buyer. And we're also always making sure that we're helping all of the other strategic partners. And that's what I call them as I'm building this strategic team for my buyer. I want to be in charge of all of the strategic partners that we're going to be pulling in to get this person or these folks to the end of the transaction and to the closing table. Where can we take contracts class? Our market center is new. They don't have it. Go to your leadership and ask them to have it. There's probably somebody there that is willing to do a contracts class. And they may just not be there yet with trying to formulate that. So it's okay to go to your leadership and ask for participation in how to get that started. That
Yeah,
would be my recommendation.
as market centers grow, there'll be a dedicated day. So we 463, we do it every Wednesday. Right now it's every other Wednesday. We do Maine at 10, Mass at 9. And then every Wednesday at 10 and 11, we do Maine and New Hampshire. And we're eventually going to start adding a Vermont conversation. So I don't know if we're going to start before breakfast or what, but every Wednesday,
Right.
every Wednesday, sacred time is
Yeah.
before noon. We are in contracts class for almost 4 states. We're getting there. I'm sure that'll start after the first of the year because nobody's ever done. It's not like Kenyon was like, oh, but I went to contracts class back in 1938, 4 weeks in a row. I got it. Like they're ever changing. Those documents are alive and breathing and ever changing. It's not every 20 minutes, but once a month, they might be making changes to to those state documents. And we need to know those inside and out. The only reason our clients will be comfortable with us is if we know what we're talking about. So if you can't have a conversation around the contracts, if you can't read it upside down, backwards, blindfolded, we have a little more leniency now because you can be sharing a document over Zoom. They're looking at it, you're looking at it. If you're going to somebody's kitchen table, don't bring one copy because I'm pushing it over to the Kenyans. I'm like, well, wait a minute, hold on. Oh, that's Latin. I didn't take any Latin. Like have a copy in front of you so you can read through it with them. Spend time on these documents. Their comfort level around the paperwork is going to be paramount to their comfort level throughout the transaction, and their trust in you is going to be. So, oh my God, we're dancing again.
Who knew it was a dance party today?
We're gonna mute Robert. I don't know what's happening.
I'm just gonna mute the whole thing.
So his
Sorry,
side
I'm
hustle
trying to
is
do
he's
like
opening a nightclub in Nottingham, New Hampshire. In case you're wondering what's going on.
Yeah,
Contracts
know
and
your
business.
contracts, people. And if there's not a contracts class, get together with some other folks in your market center and just read through them. When we're going over the purchase and sales agreement with our buyer, we shouldn't be stumbling over what we're reading. And nor for I say purchase and sales agreement because we're talking about contract to close, but any contract or document that we're going to be using during the time that we're working with a buyer or seller, we can't be looking at it and stumbling over it when we're reading it. We need to understand those inside and out. We're in charge of a really big deal for these buyers. This is a huge transaction. For most people, it's the biggest transaction that they'll have in their life. So it is our job to know the contract and to be a good steward of that for them. And that really is important to have a relationship with the lender. So one of the things with this timeline is we should always be ahead of it. We should be predicting what's coming up next. We should be predicting where some pitfalls are, because part of the timeline is making sure that we're avoiding where something can go sideways in this deal. And one of the biggest ways something can go sideways is over lending. So we want to prepare our buyer that you're sending the contract over to the lender, and the lender is going to be asking you for a lot of documentation. Hopefully, they've already submitted a lot of documentation. If you've done a really good job consulting with them during the buying process, where you're signing up buyer agency and you're taking them shopping and you're getting them rolling with the lender, you're getting them prepared for all the documents that they're going to need and start sending them over to the lender so that they can be building their file with things like bank statements and tax returns and paycheck stubs. We're reminding our buyers that we're not opening any new credit accounts. We're not paying off any credit accounts. We're not putting any large deposits into our checking account that are going to have to get sourced. We're not buying new cars. We're not doing any of those. It's always the car. People buy or get under contract, and for some reason they become like big spenders. So we need to kind of rein that in with our buyers. And this is a time when it's important to be really direct. And it's okay to be direct, especially about money. Okay. So we're working with the lender. When we go under contract, the first thing I do obviously is let the buyer know that we're under contract. And then I have my checklist of everything that I do. Right. We send the contract over to the lender. We start engaging everybody that we need to engage. We're communicating with the co-broke. That's not really on the timeline, but we will get into that as we move through today's session. And this is an area where working successfully with your co-broke is very important. And I'm very passionate about your co-broke relationships, because having a good relationship out on the playground will win you future business. Because when those other agents in the market start recognizing you as a player and somebody that's great to work with, it will impact the next time you deliver an offer to that co-broke for your next buyer. It will definitely have an impact.
Susan, to your point about vehicles, I think right now, if you have a client and they're super excited about the 3-car garage and they want a car in every garage, they should slow their roll unless the couch is in the showroom or the car is on the lot. They're at about 12 to 18 months. I just had my parents wait on deck furniture. My sister just ordered a lazy boy and they told her 2035. So like ordering it now doesn't mean it's going to be there for closing day. It's going to be there in a couple years. So just pump the brakes. They should be doing any major buys. Like if they're going to be, I can't think of something that would hit that hard, but they've got to wait until closing to finish out on the F-150 or buy every piece of furniture to fill the house with.
Yep.
But we wanted it in time for the house, but now you're not going to get the house, Barbara, right? It's going to look great it's going to look great in that field where you're moving because the house isn't going to close, So they just get, and they have to trust you. And this goes back to trust. They have to trust that you've been down this road enough, right? Feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Had a lot of clients that felt the same way. And what we found is when you buy the truck before the house, you don't get the house, right? Feel, felt, found is the greatest script. You can use it in any conversation to talk people down and commiserate with them, right? Empathy, authenticity, and logic.
Yep.
Always.
Absolutely. That's a great script and it does work every time. And, sometimes you have to just let them know, I'm going to need you to trust me on this. I'm going to ask for you to trust me on this. This is what I do. Okay. And, bring your lender in. So you need to know when you're working with the lender, you need to ask them, like, how are they with their ratios? If they're super tight and their credit is like they're squeaking through, you absolutely need to know that because you need to be having these reminder conversations with them over the next 30 to 60 days until you get to the closing table. Okay. And, part of this timeline is the home inspection. And I know that in the last year, we've seen a lot of buyers pass on a home inspection. That is not the normal. I'm starting to see people do more home inspections which makes me happy. I like for my buyers to do home inspections. So that is part of this timeline. So as soon as we go under contract, I'm reaching out to home inspectors to find out availability. I'm coordinating people's schedules. And that means that I put my schedule in there too. So I have to, you need to be at the home inspection. So if you talk to another agent and they're like, I don't need to be at the home inspection, I'm an advocate for being at the home inspection. Sometimes my buyers aren't at the home inspection, but I am at the home inspection. So we need to be coordinating that. And we also, one piece that is not in here on the timeline, and I'm going to say I would put it right in between, like right after home inspection, I would put title. And the reason that I put the title there is that for my buyers, I do not have my lender, I ask them not to order the appraisal until after the home inspection. And the reason I do that is I don't want my buyer to pay for that because the buyer's going to have some closing costs that are going to happen at the closing table. But there's a couple things that they pay for at time of service. And one of them is the home inspection or plethora of inspections, depending on what they're doing. And the other is the appraisal that gets paid for when it's ordered. And they used to be $450, $500. I'm seeing appraisals now $700, $800, $2,000. So they pay for the appraisal at time of service. If something is going to happen in this transaction that's going to cause the transaction not to happen at the home inspection, I don't want my buyer paying for that. I also don't want to give away leverage, right? So if that seller knows that the buyer just paid $1,500 for an inspection, for an appraisal, and they're asking for something from the inspection, I kind of know that they're kind of already all in because they've already got probably a couple grand into this property. Are they going to walk away from that over a request for a mitigation system for radon or something? Probably not. So I don't want to give away any leverage to the seller side. until I have to. So after home inspections, they generally will order appraisal and title at the same time. A lender orders those. The lender orders the appraisal and the lender orders the title. They typically pull both of those triggers at the same time after, and I like that to be after home inspection. So I am a control freak when it comes to contract to close. I need to be in charge of that. So make sure that you're communicating appropriately with your lender. Okay, does anyone have any, if anyone has any questions, put your hand
I
up
do have a
and or
question,
just jump in. Yeah.
Um, so you said that you make sure to wait until after that inspection, with the market being as crazy as it is. I mean, I'm in Vermont, but I'm sure it's just as rampant for you. Have you found timeline issues in that at all? Like as far as, finding an appraiser and making sure, everything is done before then. Have you had an issue with that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really fantastic point to bring up and a great question. Yes. So when you're putting your contract together, you need to keep that in mind. So if you want to be able to get that appraisal ordered sooner rather than later, then you need to get your inspection scheduled like immediately. So if I'm feeling really strongly about an offer that I have in with a buyer, I may be reaching out to inspectors prior to even going under contract just to get a pencil in. And be honest and direct with your home inspectors. We don't want to book something and take that time away from something if we're not going to get it, but have an idea of their schedule. The home inspectors will generally work with you. They want your business. They want you to win the contracts. So if they know that you're going to be under a time crunch, then start lining those dominoes up as soon as you can, and let them know as soon as you get the signatures that you'll be booking that with them. If you are thinking that you're going to have an issue with getting an appraisal, so some things that make it a little bit more challenging to get appraisals scheduled are if you have a unique property. So an appraiser gets paid this, they want an easy property to appraise. So if you're like in the middle of Timbuktu, you might have a harder time getting an appraiser to pick up that order. So for those of you that don't understand, that don't know the process, is the lender orders an appraisal. They order that through a third party. It goes out there to the appraisal pool, and then you wait for an appraiser to pick that order up. So they don't just call Tim Lindsay appraiser and say, Tim, can you do this? They put it out there. They wait for it to get picked up. If it's like far away, a lot of appraisers are going to bypass that because they might not want to go. Okay. If it is depending on the loan type, if it's a VA loan or an FHA loan, there's less appraisers that can do that type of appraisal than just a regular conventional. So that might take you a little bit longer. If it's a multifamily, it's going to cost more, and not all appraisers are going to want to do that. So those are some things that might make it a little bit more challenging. So in order to speed up that timeline, have your other things done as quickly as possible. If you are really getting into a time crunch, you have to be upfront with your co-broke as soon as that's ordered. There's generally a turn-in date for the appraisal. So you need to be working with the co-broke as well. So once the appraisal has been ordered and the lender can see that it's been picked up, then you'll want to reach out to the listing agent and let them know it's been ordered, let them know it's been picked up. If they know who it was picked up by, the listing agent can call that appraiser and try to get on their calendar more quickly. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Awesome. Great question. And really, the appraisal piece right now is one of the biggest sticking points for a lot of buyers and sellers, right? Because buyers are offering over asking price. Is that property going to appraise? Part of your responsibility to your buyer is for you to know if that property has zero chance of appraising because they've offered way more than what the close comparables are saying, Who's going to come up with that difference? And have you compensated for that in your offer? As we're seeing appraisal gap language right now. And I'm not going to get into specific language on contingencies because of the state differences that we may have, but it is a consideration in our timeline when that appraisal comes in. What's that dollar amount going to come back at? Okay. Home insurance, I don't know why, but home insurance, the buyers wait until the last minute to get homeowners insurance. Oh, I see that you have your hand up. Go ahead, hon. Anita.
The appraisal, is it an option if asking the seller to pay for the appraisal and we can deduct at closing? Suppose the house doesn't get appraised because the seller listed too high, but the buyer is paying for the appraisals and the buyer will be hit with the bill. So I'm just.
I just love that you're thinking outside of the box and having the seller pay for that stuff. Generally, I would, if you want the seller to pay for something, it's going to be more of like a seller concession in general. So I might be asking the seller to pay X number of dollars in closing costs.
Okay.
There are times when, you know, an appraisal requirement from a lender might be waived.
Okay.
It's generally going to be if it's a conventional loan and the buyer is putting down a minimum of 20%. And we have no control over that. That's a lending side. You can ask the lender to, if that's going to be an option, and there's a lot of regulation around that. So that's where being in good communication and relationship with your lender is important. And Jennifer, could you explain on home insurance and home warranty? Yeah, where did that help you, Anita, with appraisal?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. So the home insurance, part of, if you're getting a loan, the lender's going to require that the buyer have an insurance binder. And that means that they pay for a year of their homeowner's insurance up front because it gets their escrow, it gets that paid for. And then when the buyer is making their regular mortgage payments, and a piece of that is going into building up their escrow for homeowner's insurance for the following year. And that money comes out at the closing table. However, they have to communicate with their insurance contact and get that binder set up. And for some reason, they wait until the last minute. It can be done immediately, but they always wait to the last minute. And sometimes you're waiting to get that final clear to close from your lender because the insurance binder isn't in. So that's why we keep this on the timeline, because remember, when something goes wrong, it's our fault, regardless of whose fault it is. It always comes back to you. And we want to be the dessert without the fly here. So we're reminding our buyer, have you reached out to an insurance person? Give them insurance people to reach out to. If this is a first-time home buyer, they might not have an insurance contact. So make sure that they have those contacts, and then you're reminding them throughout, you know, week 1, week 2, when you're having those check-ins with them. Have you secured your homeowner's insurance binder yet? And that information gets connected between the insurance contact and the lender. The warranty, the home warranty, you know, we used to see more home warranties when it was more of a buyer's market. So we may see those come around again. It's a fantastic tool in a buyer's market if a seller offers a home warranty. And what that is there are companies out there that will offer home warranties for the different systems of the house, like heating system and stuff like that. So your level of service or what is covered is all dependent upon what you pay. So it used to be, we used to use this as a tool in a buyer's market where we would have the seller offer a home warranty as part of, to a buyer, and you could market that when you're marketing the home. It's also something that if the home is a little bit older and the buyer might be worried about what if the furnace goes, then a home warranty might be something that eases their mind going into a transaction where if something happens that first year, it's covered. And you connect with a company that provides a home warranty during the process of contract on being under contract, and then you get their information over to the title company, and they actually facilitate them getting paid at the closing. It gets put on that final closing statement, and they handle the payment and getting that communication going, and then it's delivered to the buyer right after closing. So that's how that does that answer your question on home warranty? There's like Home Warranty of America is one of them. I forget the others, but if you Google it or put it on your Market Center Facebook page, I'm sure other agents have other home warranty companies that they can recommend. Really fantastic tool in a buyer's market. So if you are going to be doing a home warranty, then that goes in towards the end of the process because it really happens with the title company and they get the information on the buyer and facilitate that piece. Okay. And, during this process, we're asking for referrals, right? If things are going really well, we're at the home warranty part. That means we're getting closer to closing. That's a great time to ask for a referral. Like, is there any, because you know what happens? It's like birds of a feather. As soon as your buyer goes under contract, they're gonna start talking about it to everybody. And they're probably, if they're a first-time home buyer, they're probably friends with people that are going to be first-time home buyers. If they're in the age bracket of maybe getting a second home or they're downsizing, they're probably friends with people that are in that same scenario. And it happens like that, like, right? Like my friend's getting a lake house. I think I should have a lake house. My friend's getting a condo up in the ski area. I should get a condo up in the ski area. That's how it totally happens. So ask, I- how's it going? Is anybody in your work environment looking to make a move? Any of your family or friends looking at making a purchase or selling? Who else do you know that I could help? It's okay. It's important to be asking for the referrals because we're delivering really great service here. They want to help us. And we're delivering a dessert without a fly in it, and that helps them tremendously. And they want to tell other people about that. Okay. And after the home warranty, we're working with the lender throughout the whole process. We're working with the title company as soon as they've been engaged, and then we get to the closing table. And that looks like we walk through the house prior to closing to make sure it's in the condition that the contract specified that it should be in, most times empty and broom clean. And then we go sit down at the closing table and they sign their documents, okay, which takes about 40 minutes or so. And that's the timeline for a buyer. Does anyone have any questions?
Anita was asking if the home warranty is something that lending and title will require.
No, it's definitely not required. It is not required. But if there is going to be a home warranty, it happens shortly before closing. Usually the lender doesn't even know about it because it doesn't get factored into any of the required closing costs and they don't even need the documentation on it. Okay. I've had some people, if it's a first time home buyer and an agent may want to give that as a closing gift. Okay.
I have a question. What if there was an issue with the walkthrough, like something that wasn't supposed to be there or something damaged? Like, who would you contact right after that?
That is such a fantastic question, Vanessa. I'm so glad you asked that because I'm in that scenario right now. Communication and setting expectations will help prevent a bad walkthrough. So when I have the buyer and I'm in communication with that listing agent. So I'm closing on a property tomorrow and I've been communicating with the listing agent. And we've all known the closing date's coming up. So I connected with him again yesterday and he's like, yeah, I have a glitch. My seller can't get out. They haven't started packing. Yep, that's a glitch. And my buyer needs to close on time or my buyer's going to be homeless. So now we have a problem, right? They have a seller that doesn't want to get out of the house yet, and I have a buyer that has to be out of their apartment because somebody else is moving in. So it does no good for me to be like, sorry, Kevin, that's your problem. We'll be at the closing at this time. See you there. That doesn't solve any problems. That just creates stress for everybody involved, me, the other agent, the buyer, and the seller. So if there's a problem at walkthrough, I always start asking the other side, where are we at with closing? Are your folks ready? If there were items due from the home inspection, for example, maybe you had the home inspection and the seller had to fix some things. Leading up to the closing table, you're communicating with that other agent. Did they put the railing up? Did they do this? Did they fix this? Can you please send over the receipts? Have they started packing? If you're worried about that seller moving out, then we're asking the listing agent, have they started packing? Have they started moving things out? Where are we at with that? Sometimes there's clues around that just from the showing, right? If there was so much stuff in that house and you can tell if it's going to be a hardship for them to get things out, you need to be communicating with the listing agent throughout the process. Now you get to the walkthrough and it's an issue. This is where being a win-win agent is going to help you, because you now need to work with the listing agent to solve a problem. So know what your resources are. You're immediately going to have to, maybe if there's stuff left at the property, what is the resource that I can call on to have someone come over and clean this stuff out? The most important thing is that you work with the other agent to resolve the problem. Okay. So last year I had a buyer, we showed up at the walkthrough the night before, thank goodness it was the night before. And they were still doing laundry. The sellers were still doing laundry. And they still had so much to pack. There's no way they were going to make it. And their agent, it was beyond capacity for that agent to solve that problem for them. They were just like basically crumbled in a corner, not knowing what to do. So you have to take charge. So like in that scenario, I pulled everyone in. I talked to my clients. I told them what the scenario was going to be. They had already moved out of their house with their 2 dogs. So I laid out what was going to happen, and there really wasn't a lot of debate over it because my presentation was calm. I was not, this is business for me. It's emotional for them, but it's business for me. So I handle things with the same tone that I'm using with you right now. Okay. And that looks like, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we obviously are not closing tonight. This is what's going to happen. You're going to stay up until you're done moving this stuff into the U-Haul. You need to pay for a hotel room for the sellers because now they're delayed and they have a dog. And I looked at the other agent. I said, you can get on the phone now and find a hotel that will accept the dogs. There's plenty of them in the area. I will work with the sellers on figuring out how they're going to get all this stuff into their U-Haul. Who else can we call in for resources? Were the buyers super happy? No, they wanted to close that night. But you know what they were happy about? They had a solution. It might have delayed things, but they had a place to stay. They had a place for their dogs. I bought them dinner. I worked with the other agent. There was no yelling or screaming or making people feel bad for something that wasn't going to change anything. So yeah, sometimes you're going to have an issue at a walkthrough. Take a deep breath and remember that there is a solution for most problems, and be the person that figures out what the solution is. That is great service, and that will get you referrals because you're still delivering great dessert. Okay. And sometimes it might cost you some money. Sometimes you just have to be direct about the money and say, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm calling New England Pickers. They're coming over here. They're going to clean this out while we go to the closing table so that when we're done, the buyer's going to go back to the property and it's going to be empty. And they're going to send you an invoice and it's going to be about this much money. Know what your resources are if you think you're going to be running into a problem at a walkthrough. That would be my best advice. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? No? Okay. The first thing, if you're in that scenario, is just don't panic and don't get upset. Please don't yell at your co-brokes. It's not, it doesn't solve anything. Don't yell at the other person's clients. It does not solve anything. We never want to be tossing gasoline onto a fire. Sometimes the way you solve a problem will get you more business than if the problem never happened. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Build a seller timeline. So just like the buyers, we start with an accepted offer, an executed contract, right? So we have an accepted offer. And now let's put our perspective on what the seller's going through. So the buyer was like, yay, I'm under contract. I'm buying a house. This is so great. The seller might be like, oh my God, we're under contract. Now I have to pack. Now I have to do this. It may cause them some stress going under contract. It might be just joy, but there's a lot of work now for a seller. So they have an accepted offer and you need to prepare them for what's going to happen next. And part of that is if there's going to be inspections. So when we're talking to a seller and we're preparing them for the process of inspections, we need to let them know what that's going to look like. It's going to look like the buyer and their agents coming in here with their inspector. They could be here for a couple of hours. You should not be there. Generally, the sellers aren't there. And you know what? If your seller won't leave the house, then again, your relationship with the co-broke is super important. You need to connect with that co-broke prior to, once in a while, you're going to get a seller that just won't leave, or maybe they can't leave if they're elderly. Just know what the expectations are so that you can have open communication about that with the other agent. Okay. We need to let the seller know that they need to have appropriate access to the attic. The inspector's going to need access to, so if it's a scuttle hole, and that means the scuttle hole is always in a closet. So you put the clothes are going to have to be removed because the inspector's going to have to get their ladder to the scuttle hole. You have to prepare your seller for this. They don't know that this is going to happen. I don't want to touch somebody else's clothes. Like, ew. Have them do that. Say, please empty out the closet. You can put your clothes on the bed. The inspector is going to be going up in the scuttle hole. Why are they doing that? They're looking for any signs of leaking from the roof. They're looking for mold. They need access to all 4 walls of the basement because they're looking for any moisture problems. They're looking for cracks. They need to be able to get to the systems. And we have all been in those houses, right? Where you go down to the basement and it's like an obstacle course. Okay. The buyer and the inspector need to get to the furnace. If there's water filtration systems, they need to get to those things. So we need to prepare our sellers for that. They're going to be running the dishwasher. They're going to be checking all of your systems. They're going to, and prepare them for what the inspector is going to be looking for. Prepare them. It's going to be a couple of hours. Okay. Hopefully they've already been prepared for, this is the time where, you negotiate a contract 2 times. Once when you go under agreement, once after inspections. If they find something that wasn't disclosed, they may be coming back to us for something. Don't let it be a surprise. The more clear our expectations are with our sellers, the smoother that the transaction's going to be. Because we need to keep this deal together, guys. And it's a lot of work. And this is where you really have the opportunity to shine. Sellers, and yeah, sellers are under a lot of expectation. So the more you communicate, and this is it too, like as soon as the inspection is over, they're going to be calling, how'd the inspection go? How'd the inspection go? As a listing agent, I am at the inspection. I need to represent, we get paid to represent our people. So represent them. Don't wait for it. Don't just say, here's the code to the buyer's agent, go do your thing and let me know how it goes. Be there. And when I'm there as a listing agent, I'm not like following them around being like argumentative with the inspector. No, that's not what that is, because this is business for me. It is what it is. If something's not working, it's not working. But when your seller says, how did it go? You need to be able to tell them. It's okay to say to the inspector, anything major down in the basement? How'd the attic look? Anything I should know about? Sometimes when I'm representing the seller and I'm at an inspection and I've heard, this about maybe something electrical, I'm texting or calling my seller. They are sometimes getting somebody on it before we even get an inspection response. Or maybe the inspector has a question about something, on how something works. I don't touch things at inspections. I don't flip switches. I don't do things and touch things I'm not supposed to. But maybe the inspector needs to figure out how to run something and we don't have the answer. I can call my seller right there. Hey, we're at the furnace and this isn't kicking on. They might be able to say, oh, you need to go do this. Or maybe they've turned circuit breakers off for whatever reason. I've had people with vacant homes turn circuit breakers off for the appliances. So be there and be helpful. And don't be argumentative. Do not argue with the home inspector. It will not go well. But you can also remind people too at inspections, anything can be fixed. There's a remedy for things. The next piece would be the appraisal. So just like we have the appraisal for the buyer, we have to prepare our seller with the expectation of what's going to happen from the seller's perspective with the appraisal. So the appraisal gets ordered from the lender, goes out to that third party, an appraiser picks it up, and the appraiser gets the contact information for the seller's agent, the listing agent. They reach out to the listing agent and schedule the appraisal. You go when they can go. Make it as easy as possible for the appraiser. We need to be nice to appraisers because we want them to come back with a favorable appraisal. So I try to make things as easy as possible for the appraiser. That means I go when they want to go. I do prepare and set the expectation with the seller that, we're generally going to be there in the house for 15 to 20 minutes. They're going to be taking pictures of everything. Does it have to look like it was for a showing? No, it doesn't have to be that good, but I don't want it to look a mess. They are putting a value to your home. Okay. If it's depending on your loan type, if it's an FHA or rural housing or a VA, they may be looking at more things at the property, the appraiser. So have your your seller be prepared for that. Like if it's an FHA loan and they have stairs with more than 3 steps and there's no railing, get the railing up before the appraiser gets there. Stuff like that. I set the expectation that they're not going to be there that long because the bulk of their work is done running comparables at their desk. And the reason I tell them that is because if you don't tell them that, some sellers will be like, what do you mean the appraisal came back at that? They only were at my house for 15 minutes. How can they even do that? So we set the expectation of what their job is going to be. And then I ask the appraiser while I'm at the appraisal, when are you expecting to turn this in so that we know, and then we can let the buyer's agent know. Some agents will bring comparables to the appraisal. So they'll go with a packet of information for the appraiser. So run, if you're priced really at the top and you have comps that can help, bring them. Even if they don't use them, at least you're going prepared and you're setting, you're setting a good example, and you're giving a good presentation to the appraiser. I let them know if you are having any issues or need more information, please let me know. I'm happy to help. I make sure they have a copy of the contract. I need them to know what number we're trying to hit. If we've had multiple offers, I need them to know that. I need to be at the appraisal and I need to be building rapport. Does anyone have any questions on the appraisal piece from the seller perspective? It's important to be in relationship with everybody, all of these strategic partners along the process. Okay. And they don't have title in here, but right around that appraisal part there is title work. So we need to let the sellers know too that the title work's going to happen. The title company or the attorney is going to need information from the seller so that they can facilitate all of the documentation for closing. The seller pays for things like a deed prep. There are closing costs involved for a seller. So when we were at the accepting offer phase, this is where we talk about what's it going to, what they're looking at, right? When they have an accepted offer, they're looking at the purchase price. They want to know what they're walking away from. So we need to give them clear expectation of what their check is going to look like once they hit the closing table. So know what that's going to look like. Get good at that net sheet. Sellers love it when when you have a net sheet for them at the beginning of accepting an offer and you get to the closing table and you're within dollars of that, they remember. That's a good dessert. They're impressed with you when you do that. Impress them. This is your time to shine. We want them to leave the closing table saying, damn, Susan did a great job. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without her. Okay. So after the appraisal, we're going to be at the closing table and we need to set the expectation of what that looks like, right? So between like appraisal and the closing table, this is where we're reminding them, how's your packing going? Have you started? It always takes people longer than what they think it's going to take to pack. Do they need resources to get to that point? Ask them, how's it going? Do you need resources? If you're getting close to closing and they haven't started, you need to have some serious conversations with them on, okay, you now need to hire someone. Here are some names and numbers. I'm going to bring someone by. The house has to be empty and broom clean. We're reminding our sellers if they had to do any work based off of the inspection response here. And we're asking for receipts. Maybe it was you had to get the furnace serviced. Did you do it? Oh, I forgot. Because the other agent, they'll remember the day before closing when they're looking at their file. They're going to call you and say, hey, Susan, where's the receipt for the furnace? Oh, I never thought to ask for that. You call your seller, oh, they never did it. Now it's the day before closing and you have a problem. Part of delivering dessert is not letting that be a problem. You have to know what your seller needs to do prior to closing and keep them on task.
When they tell you that they're going to depersonalize this Saturday, you pop by with lattes.
Yeah.
Just figured you guys might need some caffeine because you're working. They're all like laying there in their pajama pants watching ESPN. Like, oh, yeah, we're moving in 20 minutes, right, guys? Yeah, they will think they can pull everything off in 72 hours. They can't. And that the misinformation that people have of, well, if we put a pod in the driveway and we start to get ahead of this, we're going to look desperate. Nobody has to sign a contract they don't want to sign.
Right?
Like, I have yet to meet a buyer like, we're going to lowball them because they're ahead of the game. No, I'm excited as a buyer. They're depersonalized. They're moving out. They truly want to move. Like all the people get these limiting beliefs in their head, like, oh, but if we put a pod in the driveway, we're gonna look like desperate sellers. No, you're not. We're listing at 6, it's worth 625 and it's 2021. So you're gonna get 850 for it, maybe. Right. But in the grand scheme of things, put the pod in the driveway, move the stuff, do the thing, buy the shoes, get the dessert without the fly. Right. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And they're going to need some pushing and coaxing and encouragement. And throughout all of this, be kind. This is hard for some people. Just be kind about it and the right thing will happen, but definitely reminding them along the way of what they need to do and making sure that it gets done is important. And we want that. Nobody wants to go to a final walkthrough and have to deal with problems. You'll deal with less problems less often when you are prepared and you're in communication with your people. They have to mow right up to closing. They have to plow the driveway right up to closing. They need to be reminded of that. If they've already left the house, maybe it's a vacant house, they still need to do those things. And I've had to have those conversations with sellers. I drove by and we've had a snowstorm 2 days ago. It's still not plowed. I need you to call a plow guy. Do you have one or do you need me to give you one? It's not a question of whether or not you have to do it. It's a question of whether or not you need me to tell you who to call. Right? So that's how you pose it. You need to plow. Do you have a guy or do you need me to get you one? You need to mow. Can you go mow or do you need me to get you someone to go mow before we close tomorrow? It must be done. Okay. So take charge.
Quick question. If there's the driveway is not mowed and you say to your sellers, you have to mow, it's gotta be done, and they still say, no, screw it, I'm not doing it. So what happened next?
I've
they-
paid for mowing. Do I like that stuff? No. People generally, I believe that people are doing the best that they can in the situation that they are currently in. And I have had sellers that don't plow. And I've just had my plow guy hit it until we close. Why? Because I had to. It has to be done. My reputation is more important than having it not get done and showing up at that walkthrough and having it be just a disaster.
Exactly.
So in the perfect world, do you let your sellers know that they have to plow and they just go plow because you told them to? Yes. In actuality, there will be times when you have to actually do some of that stuff. So, yeah, good
I used
question.
to- That the mowing and keeping the fuel sufficient and the plowing and all of that, I used to put that right in an offer, but had to peel that back when the market changed. I'm probably gonna go back to that fairly soon, just because there are listing agents that don't feel as strongly about it, unfortunately, and don't kind of mandate that with their sellers to the extent they can. Sometimes it's just a reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point on the fuel too, Sue. We're in that season where, when you're doing the showing and I always look at the fuel tank. It's just, I don't even have to think about, did I look at it? I just automatically look and make sure that there's fuel. And if it's really low and maybe the house is vacant, you need to make sure that that seller is keeping the heat on. The systems have to be running. So don't assume that the other agent is recognizing that. You have to bring that up. And it might be that you ask to go into the house to make sure that it's running if it's vacant. That's happened too. And yeah, has there been times when I've had to put 100 gallons into an oil tank? Yep. But I got to get to the closing table. I would rather put the 100 gallons in there and get to the closing table and get my commission check than to have the problem where they run out of fuel and pipes burst.
Yeah,
That's
you
way more
didn't get
expensive.
paid 2 families are at the Red Roof Inn, but you know what? I didn't spend $100 on oil. Like, all right, like, yeah, get the deal done, because when you do something like that, you're creating a raving fan. The story
Yeah.
that'll tell for your buyers will be grateful. And I'll let you and Doyle address this. Can we talk about the theory or the fairy tale of sludge? There's sledge at the bottom, sludge,
There's
whatever
no
people call it.
sludge.
Yeah,
There's no sludge.
there's no such thing. There's no such thing.
No,
No
but
such-
there will be 100-year-old agent that will argue with you over it. And
Yes,
guess what?
yes.
It's
I
$20.
invented it. Yeah.
It's $20. We don't argue over things like that, people.
We're talking about oil tanks. So if you're in a propane household, obviously it's not a thing. But when you're talking about oil tanks in the basement, people argue that the needle is sitting on sludge. It's not actual oil.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just not a thing. That's all.
Yeah, so they'll want to
Talk to
give
your
you
veteran agent friend.
less money for the oil to say that there's less oil in the tank because of the sludge. In the whole scheme, and they're trying to like just showboat to their client. In the whole scheme of things, it's $20. Just move on.
And back to doing things. Okay, Lindsay's going to pass out right now because I'm actually repeating something that's been drilled into my head by one of our amazing people in our office. But
Hang on,
for
Sue. Let me
any-
write this down. Hang on.
I
Go
know
ahead.
you
Yeah,
better
go
sit.
ahead.
This
or
is
you're
being
sitting.
recorded.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, never mind. No, it's actually a good thing because I spent too many years kind of, I won't say blowing this stuff off, but maybe taking it a little more lightly than I do now. If you're going to touch anything at somebody else's property, even though it's out of the goodness of your heart, like putting oil in, putting gas in, we've all done that, shoveling or having it plowed, all of the stuff, just have it in writing that the owner of the property is okay with you doing that. Because if something, they deliver oil and there's an old fuel fill line that hasn't been used for 50 years and it floods the basement with oil, you're going to kind of want some documentation just showing how this all happened. When we go rogue, we get into trouble. Not that I have yet, but it's pending any moment, I swear.
Right.
Just a little email.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And I know I'd like somebody to tell Attorney Hyde that I actually repeated what he's drilled into my head for over 15 years. I actually I do listen sometimes.
And guys, I am not. I brought up those examples of you might have to pay for the plowing. You might have to do this. I do not throw money at deals. I do not unless I have to. And sometimes it's because I've had a seller that they just don't have it. They don't have it, and I need to do that. So it's calculated when I'm going to do that. I work really hard for my commission, and I earn it. So I'm not just going to willingly put money into a deal to keep it together when there are other parties that should possibly be doing that. But you have to be open to it to get to the end and to do the right thing for your people.
You referenced our friend Leah at New England Pickers. We have a great company that we're friends with up here at 463, and we were going into a closing in Dover years ago, and we're going to the walkthrough, and it was an unfriendly end of a marriage. She took her stuff, he took his stuff, and then the other person who didn't live there left all their stuff, which just means people just left stuff behind. The house was a mess. It looked like this family went on vacation for a month and they got ransacked and cleaned out, but it was just the two parties moved in their own directions and decided to leave whatever they wanted to leave behind. So we've now got a bride and a groom standing at their walkthrough, which should be a magical moment if you remember your first walkthrough, depending on the condition of your property when you bought it. And they're in tears. I mean, he's an emotional wreck because she is, over the deep end, crying. We're heading to the closing table, which we sat at because I promised them it would get taken care of. And Leah and her mom went through, got all the crap out. And that I'm using a polite word when I say crap, all the crap out. And then the place was absolutely standing tall. Then they went through with their cleaning team and it smelled like heaven and it was shining and everything was perfect. We went to a very elongated lunch. We got all the food and all the dessert with the fly on the plate just to drag out time. We were vamping for the cleaning team. But by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was standing tall. And that's, to Sue's point, when it's worth it. Because how would you want to be treated if you were the buyer, if you were the seller? We've always got to make sure we're putting our clients on the other side of the table, not in defense of the other client, but to remind them like, hey, if you were the seller, how would you feel about this if the buyer handed you this kind of opportunity? Or how would you feel if you were walking into your walkthrough minutes before you go into a closing table to sign documents that will be chasing you for 30 years? And it looked like the end of Burning Man. Like, let's have an honest conversation about how we should be treating each other. And we got a cleaning team in there, and a junk removal team and a cleaning team. And that was well worth it. It wasn't that expensive. And we still see them. And they're like, that was amazing. They're still in the house. They adore it. And they adore us. And that's all that matters. Right.
Yeah. And that's what they tell their friends. Our reputation is really important. Really, really important.
Do you want your real estate life to be on Dateline or the Hallmark Channel? Ask yourself that. Like, that's what kind of holiday movie do you want? That's all. Think about it.
Good
That is
points.
the best real estate quote I think I've ever heard out of all 27 billion awesome real estate quotes in this company. I'm stealing that, Tim.
Print that one,
Thank
Doyle.
you.
Print that shirt.
The t-shirt's on the way. I'll get you one.
And part of what we do to make sure that we don't have those bad issues is, plot communication points along the way. So we should have checklists, right? We have checklists for everything. We have a checklist in command in our opportunity section for the documentation that we have to have. But we need a checklist for communication. The goal is that we're going to be telling our clients what's happening next before they have a chance to call us and ask questions. If they have to call me and ask me the question, then I didn't communicate with them in time. And you might need to alter your checklists as you go. And who do you need to communicate with? You need to communicate with everyone. You need to communicate with your client. You need to communicate with the co-broke. You need to communicate with the co-broke's client through the co-broke. And what I mean by that is sometimes you need to tell that other agent something in the language and the manner and the tone that you want them to communicate that back to their client. For example, like the house that is going to have a challenge being emptied. You're communicating very frequently with the co-broke. Hey, how's, Jim and Lori doing with emptying out the house? Have they started packing yet? Have you gone by? Have you seen it? How's it looking? And remember, your tone with the co-broke is important. And it's okay to have some camaraderie around that. Like, I just want to check in with you on 123 Main Street, because I know there was a lot of stuff in there and it seemed like your folks might have a challenge emptying it out. So I want to connect with you. How's that going? Okay. So you're kind of communicating with them the way you want them to go back. They might not have thought to even be connecting with their seller on how the packing is going. So ask them, how's the packing going? Can you find out how they're doing? Do they need any resources? I have a closing tomorrow where the seller doesn't want to leave yet. And their agent, it was beyond him to even have a plan. So I had to come up with plans and make phone calls and Facebook messages to lots of people last night. I had to give him solutions to give back to his seller in a very nice way. I'm not, Kevin is doing the best Kevin can do. I need to help Kevin be better. Why? Because I need a good experience for my buyer. Is it my job? Nope. But if it's not being done, it is. Do whatever it is that you have to do to provide great service and get your folks to that closing table as happily as possible. Okay? So who do you need to communicate with? You need to communicate with everyone. And that means if you have the seller, you're communicating with the buyer's lender. If you have the buyer, you're communicating with that lender. You're communicating with everybody. You're communicating with title, regardless of who you represent. Your checklist should have a schedule of when you need to talk to each party. So every week, have you touched base with them every week? Even if there's nothing going on, you need to touch base with them. Remind them, nothing's happening. I just want to touch base and see how it's going. You know, and that happens with buyers once you get past inspections. The lender does the heavy lifting, but check in with your people. Show them that you care. Okay? Lenders, co-brokes, titles, inspectors, appraisers, you're communicating with all of them. Okay, the relationship here where we're on these communication plots, it's because we're building relationships and we're enhancing the relationships that we have, because the relationship is for this transaction and for future business. If you do this well, you'll get repeat and referral business from your folks. Okay, if you're doing this really well and at a high level with your lender, then you should be getting referrals from your lender. Okay. This is where I also like to say communication plots with your co-broke. And I like to remind everybody that the co-broke, if they're snarky, if they're difficult, we don't hand it back to them in the same manner. We are always the one that's calm, and we are always the one that's professional. Remember, they might be doing the best that they can in that moment. We don't know what's going on in their life. They may have people that in their home that are not feeling well. They may not have gotten sleep. That might just be who they are. Whatever the reason, it doesn't really matter. You be you. You decide before you make that phone call who you are. And then how you react to whatever situation you're facing on the other end of the line, you already know how you're going to react. The decision's already been made. I'm always calm and I'm always professional. Okay? And communicate.
That's a real life thing.
Yeah.
Like I had an agent, it was a few years back, but I couldn't understand. She had been in business for a long time. Nothing was smooth on her side, and she was getting very snippy. And I don't know when the light bulb went off, because I'd certainly be saying many things to myself, not to anybody else, but like, what the, like, Jesus, this is like impossible. And then the light bulb went off one day. I'm like, she's been a successful agent for a long time. Something's up. So I did call her broker. I made that decision to call her broker. They had had some concerns too. She had Alzheimer's and died like a year and a half later from it. So it was like that light bulb. It was always smooth and happy and friendly on my side because I knew something was up. But then hearing it was like, oh my God, thank God I'm just not that person to rip somebody apart or be nasty. Because can you imagine?
Oh,
So
yeah.
just always assume there's something going on, and just to be the calm factor as often as possible and assume that something like that might be happening, I think is a good way to approach things.
Absolutely. There's so much power in giving people the benefit of the doubt. And we communicate so that we can give them the benefit of the doubt and come to clarity. And recognize with your communication plots that there's times when it's verbal and picking up the phone. There's times when it's email. There's times when it's text. Know when to communicate and what method and what vehicle to be communicating with. If there's some meaty conversation that has to happen, it's not a text, people. Pick up the phone, call, back it up with an email. If it's pertinent information, back it up with an email. And always be polite. I can't stand it when I get emails that have the whole email in the subject line. Be professional. Check your spelling. Use good grammar. Be professional. And we'll talk more about that as we go along today, but we'll take a break. It is 10:25, so is 10 minutes good? We'll come back at 10:35. All right, I'll come back at 10:35, and if we need a few more minutes, we can go from there, but I'll be back sooner than that. If anyone has any questions or anything before we get started after break, feel free to jump in.
And if you don't know what you don't know and you don't know what you should be asking, that's okay too.
Hi, I have a questions.
Sure. Hi.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your good lectures. I couldn't quite understand some home insurance. I understand the home warranty, but so could you a little more explain the some home insurance depend on the some seller side?
So the homeowner's insurance is on the buyer side. The
Mhm.
lender will require that the property is insured.
Ah, I see.
And
Then, yeah, okay.
the lender, yeah, it's typically, I don't even know of any exception to that. So a lender will require that the property is insured
Mhm,
as part of their risk for taking on the loan.
mhm,
And they typically when you make your mortgage payment, insurance
mhm.
is part of your payment, right? Your monthly
Right,
payment. And
right.
so they require a year being paid up front so that the lender can make so that it's paid for. And then
Mhm,
as the buyer is making their first mortgage payments for that first year, it includes starting their escrow for the following year's insurance payments. And then the lender will be making the insurance payments after that. Does that make sense? It's kind of
Ah,
like your taxes, the lender pays the taxes. They build up escrow accounts for taxes and insurance.
I see, but
Yeah.
I am not very sure. But I understand for the some home warranty because when I buy the condos, I mean the 1 year, some we find out the some unexpected, the leakage, and then insurance coverage there once condo insurance. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Mhm,
they're a little bit different insurance and versus the warranty. So the
mhm,
insurance is if there's an insurable event on the property, like for
mhm,
example, I had a chimney fire and my
mhm,
homeowner's insurance covered my chimney
mhm.
fire.
I see.
A home warranty is it's like an insurance, but they're warranting systems in your house. Like if your furnace breaks,
Right.
they'll they part of it may be that they'll either fix or replace your furnace, and it's typically for items that could be a little bit more expensive to fix.
Right.
And so they're not required. A home warranty is not required by anybody. It's an add-on service that you can use, but
Okay.
homeowners insurance will be required by a lender.
I see.
Okay.
So a little different, but I have to take a look at some other document and to understand for the some,
Yeah. You know what? A good resource for you is talk to your lender. Figure out who you're going to partner with. I would try to identify a lender that you would like to work frequently with. And that may be somebody in your market center. They may have an affiliate partner that is a lender.
Uh-huh.
That would be your first go-to.
I
And
see.
they can talk to you and walk you through those pieces that are a little bit less familiar.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember when my husband first got his license. He got his license in 2009,
Mhm,
and he partnered with a lender who is
mhm,
still our go-to lender all these years later. And he
mhm.
really credits her for teaching him a lot of the business
I
because she
see.
had been in it longer.
Mhm,
And really, they have so much knowledge and so much value to bring
mhm,
that it's a solid relationship that you really should start developing now so that
mhm,
you can have a bigger comfort level with your practice and with
mhm.
who you're referring your buyers to.
I see. So means so if I go to Bank of America and then I can introduce some other, the bank lenders, and then that is the first step, or I have to go to market center and they already established. I just will contact to them and then support from them. That is more easiest way?
I would recommend going to your market center and asking other successful agents who they use for local lenders.
I see.
And I'm saying this with all respect, don't let it be Bank of America. They're good at some things. Mortgages are not their forte. Find a local lender that has a lot of different services and lending products that they can offer.
I see.
Okay, because I would stay away from those bigger boxed banks for building your lender relationship and go to a local lender. And
I
your
see.
market center agents will have some recommendations for you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so
I'm
much.
sorry if
Very-
anybody's spouse here works at Bank of America. I just
Sorry.
said that.
Okay, I will contact some our agency and the management and who is mostly used for some lenders in our Chestnut Hill Market Center.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
You're welcome.
And for clarity's sake, you weren't apologizing because you offended Bank of America. You're apologizing if they actually work at Bank of America.
Yeah.
Just to be
Yes,
clear.
seriously.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not picking on any big bank. We're picking on all the big banks. So there, a blanket statement.
Mhm.
And local lending is remarkably important. Nathan Dickey, our fearless leader, our regional director, would tell you that you should have local lenders. And you can't just have one lender. That's the other thing. You might have your preferred lender who does 9,000% of the stuff that you do. We have ours here at 463. His name is Brad Kelly. He's a rock star. And he and his team don't do every financial product under the sun. So you want to make sure you have that person that does portfolio loans. You want to make sure that person that does will do commercial stuff with, their eyes closed. So make sure you have a lot of local lenders. But again, the difference between a bank and a mortgage lender, we don't have time for that, but like find your local lenders, find the person you can go to lunch with, find the person you can drive down the street and have a conversation with in person. Because to Kenyon's point, you call North Carolina, where Bank of America is, and Ted, your guy, is on vacation. Then it goes to the 29th floor. Barbara, she's at lunch. Then it goes to the 35th floor. Stacy, she hates her job. She's not taking your call. You're going to voicemail, and now you're chatting with a bot online, hoping to get your buyer closed. Or find your local lender. Sounds dramatic? It is. It's the difference between the Hallmark Channel and Dateline.
And it
Back
does
to you,
happen
Sue.
that way. It does happen that way. Because Bank of America, bigger banks are good at checking accounts and they have their areas where they shine, but we need our local lenders because when are we writing offers for our buyers? At night and on the weekends. It's just the way it works out all the time. We need to be able to get a hold of them. I can get a hold of my local lender on nights, on weekends, during the day. I know when she's going on vacation. She knows my schedule. I mean, we are a partnership for sure. So I need that kind of flexibility and relationship with them. So. All right. So, we've talked a lot. Any suggestions which bank to open business account? So for your business accounts, completely different requirements from lending than it is for like lending for your buyer's mortgages. And so I would just whoever you normally bank with for your business accounts. I'd use TD Bank for my business accounts. They give me great service. I like the people up there. So completely different when you're talking about lenders for lenders for your buyer's mortgages. That's where I really would encourage you to find a local lender. So just like we talked about, yeah, you're welcome, Anita. You're so sweet. Just like we talked about communication points, like plotting them, we're plotting them because we're on purpose about them. Thinking we're going to remember to make calls and communication, thinking that we're going to remember to do all of those things timely is not a strategy. We plot them, we have checklists so that we make sure that they get done and that it's done on purpose. And the same thing with documents. Documentation in this business is so important for a lot of reasons. We need to be compliant. We have a very big responsibility to make sure that our files are compliant and that we're doing a solid to our clients and making sure that we're not putting them at risk we're making sure that we stay in contract, like, right? If there's delays and we need more documents, or there's contingency deadlines, that we're following up with all the correct paperwork. So we need to have a plot of documents on our timeline to make sure that they happen. And that's going to look different for different states and different practices, right? So we have a checklist for documents in command of what we have to have when we create an opportunity. So we open up command, and the vertical line on the left, which has like basically all our apps that we have access to. When we go under contract, the opportunity is like the two hands shaking. We create an opportunity that for either a buyer or a seller, and then we open that up, and that will create a document checklist for what's required for the transaction. But there may be other things that we need in there as well. Like, are we making sure we're passing on utility information? Is that a document? So it's the contracts, the purchase and sales agreements, the disclosures, the deeds, the tax cards, the tax bills, the tax maps, septic designs. What are the documents that we need, and are we making sure that we're giving them back to the right people? So when we have documents like an addendum to maybe increase a seller concession, are we making sure we're giving that to the lender? Are we having documents to maybe extend closing or change the closing date? Are we giving that to the lender and the title company or the attorney? So plot the documents on your timeline so that we make sure that they get completed, so that we know what has to be signed and what doesn't. And we're developing a system in command to help ensure that we meet every deadline. Meeting deadlines is a necessity. We cannot miss deadlines. So we look at deadlines from both directions. If we are working with a buyer, we still need to keep track of the seller's deadlines, that are pertinent to the contract. And we're looking at them in advance. So if you have a document that's due back from the other side by 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, we're not waiting till 3 p.m. on Wednesday. We don't want to jam people up with our documents. Be in relationship with your co-broke, making sure that we're getting these things done in a time that works for everybody. Like not a Sunday morning. Like if we have deadline, when I'm looking at deadlines that I can write in hard dates on contracts, I'm looking at my calendar. I don't want something due on a Sunday. I don't want to work that on a Sunday, and I don't want to ask my co-brokes to do that on a Sunday. I don't want to put a lender requirement deadline on my lender for a Saturday or a Sunday. Did I make sure my closing day is a business day? Not everyone's looking at these things. We need to look at them, and then we need to plot on our timeline when our documents are due. Okay. And we're going to talk about, best practices for managing the deal. Managing the deal. Oh, Robert Vincent's got to run. Have a good class, Robert. Manage best practices, which we can learn from other people, which is a great resource like your market center, and if there is contracts class, we're learning best practices by some of the training that we do. But we're also learning our best practices by the business that we're doing. So every transaction is different, and you may be learning something in a transaction today that you can build in a best practice for. So, a best practice is something that's going to become part of your checklist. Like, for example, a best practice is when you're sending a document to someone to fill out or to sign, are you calling or texting them to let them know that it's there? Are you making sure with your clients that you're reviewing the document with them before they're signing it? If you're sending over an offer, are you making sure you're calling the co-broke to let them know that it's coming? If you're emailing them something, not everybody looks at their email all the time. So a best practice might be that you're calling or texting when you're emailing something important over to someone, that you're following that up with another form of communication. And maybe it's making sure that it was received. You might hit send and be like, God, I sent that over 8 hours ago. How come I haven't heard back? Remember the whole benefit of the doubt thing? Give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't open up their email and you never texted them to let them know it was coming over. Okay. Contracts, addendums, lender docs, maybe your best practice is to make sure that they're timely because they're really important. Preparing your client to be timely is really important. So I like to set the expectations with clients that when we have documents, there is going to be a timeline on them. So I need to get clarity around what their work life looks like, what their home life looks like. What is their ability to sign documents? Part of my best practice is to have clarity around that before we get under contract. So for example, we have the shipyard up here near where I live. And if you work at the shipyard, you can't have your phone. You can't use your personal phone while you're working. That means you can't check voicemail, you can't check text, and you can't electronically sign anything. You can't log into your personal email while you're at the shipyard. So a best practice for me is to find out what my folks' work life looks like. Because if they work at a place like the shipyard, I best not be waiting to give them something that has to be signed when it's going to be delivered when they're working, because it's not going to happen. And if it was a time sensitive document, I've now just put their deal at risk. Does anybody have any other thoughts on what best practices there might be? There's lots of good ones around communication. I would definitely spend some time thinking about that as you're building your checklists, and what kind of experience do you want your clients to have, and then build your best practices around that. So your best practices could even be, is setting the right expectation. So when I'm at a consult, so I just had a buyer consult the other day, and I set the expectation of how we communicate. If it's something quick, I will text you. If it's something with detailed information, I will call you. And then I will follow that up with an email. Okay. If you text me and it's before 7 p.m., I will respond to you within a couple hours, usually within an hour. If it's after 7, I won't get back to you till the next day. If it's email, I will either get back to you that day or the next day. If it's a voicemail, I would recommend you text me to let me know the voicemail's there. Because it's the last thing I'm not great at listening to voicemails. I'm just not. So I let them know that up front, that I'm very quick to respond to a text. If we start texting and it's going to require further communication, I let them know right from the beginning of our relationship that will have to be followed up with a phone call. If we start texting and it gets too detailed, I let them know we need to just get on the phone and not continue to text about this. So I let them know I'm going to say that sometimes, so that when it happens, they're not surprised. Don't argue with anybody over text. Definitely pick up the phone and give them a call. One best practice that I had, sometimes you learn your best practice from things going wrong, that you're like, you know what? I'm never going to let that happen again. One of our, we had a contract where I had the seller and their buyer had child support issues. So we didn't find out about it until like a week and a half before closing, because that's when their lender found out about it. and it blew up the transaction. Now I live in New Hampshire. My folks were going to Florida. It was right before fall. They already sold their snow blower. They got rid of their shovels. They packed up all their winter coats. They had to unpack them all when that transaction didn't happen. I now build language into my contract that I need a list of conditions if I have the seller, I need to have a list of conditions on the buyer's lending within a certain number of days of going under contract. So I know what they are. So that's when things like a child support will come out. So sometimes you learn your best practices by having something not go so great and saying to yourself, I am not going to let that happen again. Kind of like the walkthrough where you're calling the listing agent when you have the buyer. Have they started packing? That's a best practice that you put in writing in your checklist. So when we're talking about managing the deal and best practices, it's by being on purpose about it and having a checklist for that and not thinking you're just going to remember. Because when you have a lot of things under contract at the same time, you forget. You forget where you leave off. So you have to have it in writing. So why do we have best practices? It's to avoid risk and to avoid something going sideways. So where is the deal at risk of falling apart? Anyone have any ideas of where a deal might fall apart? Inspections,
Yeah.
right?
How about from A to Z and beyond? Reality.
Sue, maybe you could, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think that keeping deals together right now is harder than it's ever been.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's bizarre stuff that comes up.
Yep.
I've had things happen over the past 6 months that I could never even predict.
Right? It's like you shake your head going, really? That's happening?
Yep. But I also think when you're on the newer side and that those things haven't happened yet, you have to get really good at just like, okay, we got it. This is what we need to do, and go into fix it mode and don't get all dramatic and stress out your clients. Just fix it if you can.
Absolutely. And that's a best practice too, is really getting good at not taking this personally. This is business for us and we need to be professional. So the deal is at risk of falling apart during inspection. So if we set the right expectations, then we reduce the risk of a deal falling apart at inspections. So how do we do that? We do that by communicating with our clients and with the other agent that inspections are for significant issues not previously disclosed. So let's back that up a little bit further. If you're working with a seller, let's talk in depth about disclosure. That's a best practice. We disclose as much as everything that we can about the property to the buyer while they're looking at the property. Then we go under contract. They know about these issues. If the roof is leaking, we need to tell them. We don't wait for them to go under contract, have an inspection, then come back to us, then want a new roof, or just walk away. So reduce the risk of a deal falling apart at inspections by having better disclosures, by having better expectations with our buyer on what inspections are for. What about appraisals? Things right now, the deal is at risk of falling apart for appraisals. So how do we avoid that? We avoid it by knowing what your comparables are. An appraiser is going to look at closed comps. Guess what? We can look at closed comps. We should be looking at closed comps. If we have the buyer and the house is listed at 400 and they really want that house and the closed comps are for 400 and they want to offer 450, you need to just stop and have a conversation on what that looks like. Because if an appraiser can't comp it out at 450, but you're willing to pay 450, who's paying the extra 50? Have the conversation up front and very direct when it comes to money. Okay. Financing. The deal is at risk of falling apart at financing. So if you have the seller and you have offers on the table, are you looking at their pre-approval letters? Do you know who they're using for financing? Are you calling those lenders? You can call a lender on somebody else's buyer. Be transparent. This is Susan Kenyon. I'm calling on behalf of Tim Lindsay, who has an offer in on a property that I'm working with on the seller. They gave me your pre-approval letter. It says this. I'm just calling to get clarity around it. And then staying in touch with that lender after you go under contract. That will help keep a deal from falling apart. Knowing about the child support, knowing about, do they have all their documentation into the lender? Okay. Make sure you know your loan types. If you have an offer in on your property that you have listed and it's an FHA loan and you know that property does not meet the requirements and your seller's not able to do any work to the house, do you want to recommend going under contract with that buyer? Know your loan types. What tasks have deadlines and what are those deadlines? So we reduce the risk of a deal falling apart when we know what our deadlines are. Okay. Are we clear with the co-broke on what the deadlines are? So when we go under contract, one of the first things I do is I send an email to the other agent making sure that we're both clear and in agreement to what the deadlines are, whether I have the buyer or the seller. Because if I'm saying the deadline for inspections is December 1st and they think it's December 2nd, we need to get clarity on what the actual date is. Because once it's a problem, it's a problem. We just want to avoid the problem. It doesn't always matter who's right if it's going to cause a deal to fall apart. Okay. How can you help manage other parties involved in the deal? Through over communicating, right? In a very friendly, professional way. Nobody wants to be spoken to in a condescending manner. For example, when I have this closing for tomorrow and the other person wanted to delay it for another week and they waited until too long to ask us for that, it doesn't do any good for me to say, dude, why didn't you tell me this a week ago? I could have done something about it. But now it's too late and that's your problem. That doesn't solve anything, right? Over communicate and speak professionally and have a good tone of voice when you're communicating with your co-brokes and just figure out a solution together. But staying on top of your deadlines, your paperwork, over communicating, being clear with both sides of the transaction, those are great ways to avoid having a transaction fall apart. The better you get at contract to close, the less deals you'll have falling apart. Because it really stinks when you've done so much work finding that buyer or seller and getting them under contract and then having it fall apart for something that could have been prevented. Does anyone else have any questions or anything to add on the best practices and risk avoidance?
Susan?
Hi.
We are very, and maybe this happens all over, and for people in attorney states, there's no reason that your chosen or group of attorneys couldn't do this class. We've been really lucky for about, I don't know, I think it's been going on for like 2 years. We have a title company up here that has done, what are they calling it? Avoiding disaster or something like that, like the top 10 reasons closings fall apart. It's literally one of the best classes out there. And it gives you, even when you think you kind of know what you're doing, there's always a handful of things like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't run into that before. I would talk to your title or attorneys about putting together a class. They've seen all this stuff. They deal with it every day. It wouldn't be a really, complicated class to put together. and it gives everybody a different thought process as they go through a transaction.
Yeah, great idea. And they do have a lot of knowledge to share. Like, have you read the deed before you put your buyer under contract
Hmm.
to find out, did you read the deed?
Did you read it? Do you know what you're doing?
Is it-
There were 47 easements on that property. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, you didn't know that Unitil could drive through your backyard for the utility easement. You need to know that before you go under contract. Read the deed, read the disclosures. You know, know what your buyer's risk is for financing. Like, are they really tight on their financing? Like, one thing can put them over the edge. Are they buying a property that somebody just flipped and the taxes on that were from when it was a dump? And now they've they flipped it and their taxes are going to be going up. And as soon as the lender gets the new taxes, they no longer can afford the house. I mean, you have to prepare people for this stuff. Let's avoid this deal falling apart because their taxes are going to go up and make the house unaffordable. You have to look at every piece of documentation. If the documentation isn't there by the listing agent, then go get it yourself. It doesn't matter whose job it is. It matters that it gets done and that you protect your clients.
You all, you also have to make sure that they don't buy that 40,000 if they're very tight with the financing part. You have to make sure that they don't buy that $40,000 car 3 days before the closing, because they
Oh.
might lose that loan.
They
Right.
might. Or how about, do you remind them not to change jobs?
Yeah.
Holy
yeah, that's-
cow, that has happened. You know, don't change your job. Don't change your job. If you are thinking about a job change, we need to pump the brakes, have some clarity with the lender around that. You know, they might need if it's within the same industry, it might be okay, but they might need a paycheck stub from the new place before you can close. Is that going to happen in time? So, you know, a lot of times risk avoidance is about being in relationship. It's setting expectations, being in relationship, communicating, asking leading questions. Okay.
Talking about the power of a good title company. And I don't know if Doyle remembers who this was. It was somewhere in New England. It wasn't our market center. And this is a confusing term. If you're a freshman in real estate, welcome. When land is in current use, it means it's not being used. When you take it out of current use to build upon it, the tax structure changes dramatically. And this house was built on land that was pulled out of current use, that was in current use, and built upon. And the math was based on the taxes of the land in current use. So the title company and everybody involved missed that math. The state didn't.
No, they're not going to
Yeah.
miss it.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
not going to miss it. But yeah,
That's
are a big one.
yeah, that kind of stuff, that'll get you. So, you know,
Yeah.
having that. So if you have no idea who your local lender is, obviously most of your market centers probably have great allied resources insofar as title companies. Just find out who the rock stars are. Find out who your go-tos are, and people that you know are not going to miss land in current use.
That is another reason to use a local lender. I mean, my lady finds things, I'm like, really? I didn't even see that. And she looks at everything and she'll go the extra mile. Those relationships are super important. Also super important is your co-broke relationships. I am so incredibly passionate about having good co-broke relationships. This is really, there's so many agents out there, but it is such a small playing field. We run into the same people over and over again. Your reputation with your peers is very important to your future business. Also, decide who you are as a person, right? Like, I'm kind. I advocate for my clients. I protect them. I do right by them. I keep their information confidential. But the better reputation I have in the field, the better I can serve them, the stronger likelihood their offers are going to get accepted. For sure. So your co-broke relationships, very important. Why is your relationship with your co-broke important? Because you can avoid a deal falling apart when you're in good relationship. And we'll back it up. You know, when getting buyers under contract is really hard right now. It's a lot more work than it used to be. And we used to have the, love letters that a buyer would write to the seller, which we're not doing anymore. But I write a love letter to the listing agent when I submit an offer. I want them to know what kind of agent I'm going to be to work with. It may be somebody that I've worked with before. It may be somebody that I haven't worked with before, but I need for them to know that what expectations I have set with my buyer that's going to help their seller. And I'm doing this so that I can script them with what they're going to go back to their seller with. That's why I'm writing it. Right? So if I let them know up front that I've already reviewed with my buyer what inspections are for, and we've read through the property disclosure together, that we're really only looking for significant issues that have not been disclosed, that we are not going to be writing a honey-do list of not important things that have to be done, that I am a win-win professional that seeks to have a solution that works for everybody involved in the transaction, that we're working with a great local lender, that their file's already been reviewed. I mean, I am selling. This is a sales job. If you all thought that this was just HGTV and this was not a sales job, I got this far into the presentation without reminding everybody that this is sales. This is a sales job. You have to sell yourself to your co-broke all the time. You sell yourself to the co-broke at the showing. You sell yourself to the co-broke even setting up the showing. Are you being professional and easy to work with, trying to set up the showing when it might be challenging for the listing agent? If you're making it difficult for them at the beginning, do you think they're going to want to go under contract with you and spend 30 to 60 days with you? Not a date that they're going to want to keep. So sell yourself to your co-broke people. Like, be the person they want to work with the most. That will serve your clients and it will make for a much better transaction. It's way more fun when we all work together nicely. It doesn't mean that we always have to agree. Okay.
Sue Kenyon putting the fly on your cheesecake.
Right.
Keeping it real.
It has to be said. We got to sell ourselves all the time. We need to create a win-win. As we're selling our position, we need to let them know that we're going to work through things with them together. Right? Your reputation lives on past the transaction. So how you treat your co-broke during this contract to close is very important. You know, when you're at the closing table and the buyers and sellers are happy and they're getting along, and your co-broke can say, hey, Tim, it was great working with you. Let's do this again. That helps your next client. Right?
Well, to your point too, Kenyon, if you start creating these great relationships at other brokerages, eventually they're going to realize, wow, all the kids over at KW are pretty cool. They always have listings. They always have great commissions. They're always very generous at the closing table. And maybe if I went and played in their sandbox, my business would grow.
Oh,
right?
profit share.
Yeah. Well, and then you benefit. Yeah. But I mean, just insofar as just kill everybody with kindness.
Yeah.
Right. We are market leaders. We're no longer the tiny little brokerage that everybody thinks might be a paint store. Like, we're a monster in this industry. And all it takes is, for one bad person, not one bad person, but one bad exchange between two agents. And nobody's going to remember it was Andy or Shelly or Tim. They're going to remember like, yeah, that's Tim. Definitely with Keller Williams. Like, they grab the big broad brush and paint everybody as evil. And, for our market center, we're talking about 775 agents, never mind the administrative staff and all the people that work operationally for those teams. We're over 1,000 souls on board. Then we're talking about their families at home. So when we go out in public and represent ourselves and our company and the families behind the people that we work with, that's a massive responsibility, and we should act that way. We should act accordingly when we're playing with the other humans, you know, because there's just and to Sue's point, there's probably something going on. If you're getting pushback from the other side of the table, they might have something going on in their life. They might have some medical or neurological stuff going on. Above and beyond that, they've got one deal. It's this deal. And if it doesn't close, everything's going to go sideways in their life. So, you know, Sue said it earlier, and it's so true. We have to approach every conversation as this person on the other side of the table is doing the best they can right now. It's not always the case, but that's the way we need to enter into these conversations. Right?
Yeah, their best today might be different than what their best is tomorrow, but what we need to do here is to give grace. You know, I ask for grace sometimes. I might be have moments in in a transaction where I need to ask for grace. I might need to ask for help, but we always need to be the person providing grace. And how this also helps your client is, you know, you never know where in the transaction you're going to be the one asking for something, right? So it could be if you're going into this transaction on a tough relationship and tough communication with the co-broke, when we have to go back and ask for a delay in maybe financing commitment or an extension on closing, if you're not in good relationship, their ability to want to help you and grant you that with their client is smaller, right? Sometimes it helps just because we need to get two opposing parties or two parties with different wants and needs together. So we're under contract and we're trying to get through inspection negotiations, right? Now, the seller's client might be a 35-year-old contractor with tools. My buyer might be a 75-year-old woman downsizing, single. We might be going through inspections and she might be saying, Susan, I really need him to fix this particular thing, this handrail. Which is not a significant defect, right? But it is to her. So how am I going to communicate that nitpicky little fix to the seller who might their reaction is, well, that's not a significant issue that wasn't previously disclosed. Then you need to be in relationship and say, you know what, you're right, Tim, that's not a significant issue, and your client has their perspective and they're right, it's not significant. My client, to her, it's a significant issue because it's not something she can repair on her own, and she's right in her perspective. How do we get them together? Because we have a buyer that wants to buy and a seller that wants to sell. Is it a hardship for your contractor, 35-year-old dude, to fix that and make my 70-year-old lady's life easier when they move in? Yeah, you're right. You know, so get on the same page with people, be in relationship. And sometimes it's just the words that we use, because words matter, right? Our tone matters when we're working with our co-broke. If we're trying to get past something that is of opposing views and somebody's tone is up here, we need to bring people back down and communicate effectively with a professional tone, because this is not what you will experience being a real estate agent is that a lot of real estate agents panic and treat this personally, and they operate up here all the time. There are a lot of agents out there like that. We don't rise to that. We stay level and bring them back down.
If Nathan were here, he'd say you can bring kerosene or water to the fire, right?
Yeah.
And then you know, we always say we have to not be emotionally attached to the outcome. We're going to build these interpersonal relationships with our you know, initially a consumer, then a client, and then probably a friend as it gets close to the end of the transaction. Our job is to show up and get in between the humans and insert professionalism.
Yeah.
We have to play the role of extracting emotion from the transaction and remaining professional, And at the same time, yeah, working with like win-win or no deal, right? It's the Y4C2Ts. It's win-win or no deal. And how do we get them moved on with their life, our buyers moved in with our life, and how do we take ourselves out of the equation? And again, back to that agent that's on the other side of the table that's maybe pushing or is being a little gritty with you. If this is their one deal, now they're going to stake their greatness upon this deal closing, and it's no longer in the best interest of the clients. And as soon as we get there, we've got a problem. And that's why we're always encouraging you guys to make sure that you have more than one deal. You should have more than one burger on the grill. Because if that burger goes horribly wrong and there's nothing on the grill, that's when people start rolling up their sleeves and swinging. And that's not where we should ever be with the largest financial transaction in most of these people's lives. You know, we need to be cool, calm, and collected. If it's your freshman year and this is your first deal, you know, Barry Sanders, you know, he used to score touchdowns and hand the football to the referee. Act like you've been there before, right? You know, so.
And that might mean you have to let someone vent, right? If you're delivering some news that's not great and you know that co-broke tends to kind of be explosive out of the gate and then comes back down, give them a chance to vent, give them grace, and then bring them back to working on a solution together. I think, Sue, did you have something?
I just, one of the 85 million things that Nathan has drilled into our heads for so many years, and boy, are we lucky, is the very simple, the first one to yell.
Who yells?
Be the first to yell, you're going to lose. So done.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Here's another Nathanism. Never write something down that you can't take back. Right? Don't send an email in anger. Never write something that can hurt you or your client when it gets read to your broker or to the ethics committee. I mean, not that that's ever happened to me. That has not. But, you know, if you have something to say that's going to come back and hurt you, don't do it. Don't put that in an email. Do not let someone forward something that you emailed or wrote down to your broker and have them call you and read it off to you. If that's going to happen, hit the X, that delete. Don't send it. If you need to vent to someone, call another agent. Just say, I just want to vent with you about this before I call the co-broke so I don't do it to them. Figure out what it is that you have to do and do it, but don't do it to them.
Yeah, pretend you're in the courtroom sitting at the left side table or at the commission at the little table, not the big table, and a judge or commission member is reading what you wrote. Would it still be okay?
Yeah.
Delete, reword, soften.
Yeah. Yeah. And have a sense of humor. Like, really? So I'll tell you a personal story, and I don't usually do family stuff on these things, but my son was in Afghanistan this summer, and he was at the gate when that explosion happened. There is so little in real estate that bothers me. I have a different perspective on life. I just choose to not let it bother me. No one's getting, so when something, I mean, I have several deals right now going on that are a challenge to keep together. But before I call that agent or my client, I tell myself, no one's getting blown up today.
Yep.
I can handle this. And you guys can handle this too. Be the best person in the room. There are no emergencies in real estate. We can handle them. We can handle them.
Nathan would always say, you know, without fail. I mean, Gary says it, like when we went into COVID, Gary said we used to be physically based, virtually enhanced, and we flipped it on our head and we're virtually based, physically enhanced. And Nathan would always say, to that strength, you should be picking up the phone and having the conversation and then confirming via email, right? Don't ever text or email something you wouldn't be willing to say face to face or over the phone. When we first moved here, and you guys know this because Doyle now lives in Nate's old spot, and Nate was at his desk in his office, and I was in the bunker around the corner, and I'm quite animated. So I was screaming about something and he's in the other room. He literally gets up, sneaks out to lunch. He calls me from his truck. I'm still yelling. I'm mid conversation with him. And he calls me from the truck and he's like, yeah, I had to head out. I'm like, you're not in the other room? I'm like, I said things I can't take back. Like I was like, couldn't believe he let it, but he was just like, but he called me back to let me keep venting because I was like on fire about somebody across town at some other brokerage. But to his point, like, we should be having these conversations. Everybody always says I'm better off face to face. And then we hide behind text and email. Right. And my really bad math, but it's something like this. It's 43% is the words we choose. 7% is the words we choose, correct? 43% is our tonality, the way in which we deliver those words that we chose. And 50% is our body language. So absent you on screen or physically standing in their presence, half of your power is in the words you choose and how you physically deliver them with your voice so they can hear the passion and the care in your voice. Right? Text gets pulled out of context all the time. All the time. You read a text and you're like, why would she say that to me? Yeah. And I think this is a sidebar. I think people are abusing the exclamation point.
Yeah, right.
The question, do you want soup, doesn't need to be followed by a question mark and 32 exclamation points. Nobody's that excited about hot water. Nobody. Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. So I know we spent a lot of time on the co-broke relationship. It's because it's that important. So put some thought into that. Build good co-broke relationships because they will help you as you move through your career for sure. And why do we have this good contract to close experience? To get repeat business and referrals. There's so much power in this. I get so much repeat and referral business because I focus on this, and what we focus on expands, right? So wow your clients. How do we do that? So let's talk about that for a little bit. Facebook, social media, they're on it. So we need to be on it in a very positive and professional way. Be on Facebook, add value, be positive posts only. No complaining, never bashing others. Never, ever, ever bashing others. Okay. Consistency on your, I do like to bring up the social media piece here because your clients are on it. You're giving them a good experience on it. If you're consistently on it after they close, you're reminding them that you're in the real estate business because it's not their job to remember. It's our job to keep reminding them that we're here when they have a need again. Because the worst thing that happens is you have a buyer, you put them under contract, and 2 years later, you see them on Facebook with another agent selling that house and moving up to the next level house. Yep, that's not their problem, that's your problem. So we get repeat and referral business by providing great service, wowing our clients. This has used the KW app. And I think that, I don't know if the update to that has come through yet. I know they were changing the KW app.
So the consumer app is not going to change. Kelly, as you guys know it, is sunsetting. And the rumor was we're going to have it around Veterans Day. And then David Voorhees came on the national call and said D1, which is tomorrow. So
there we go.
I think they believe that it's going to be getting disseminated in the next few days, which is going to be great. So Kelly will be gone. It's going to be called Command Mobile. It will act like Kelly did, 1,000 times better. Godspeed. And it's going to be the remote control for your business in your hand. Your clients will have your mobile app. You will have Command Mobile, and any communication you have between you and your clients will also live in their contact page in Command, which Robert's probably speaking about right now because he's teaching class. I think he's doing DocuSign though. But anyway, so yeah, Command Mobile should be here in the next couple of days.
Yeah. So use that. We have Command, and we didn't talk a lot about Command today, but when we have, once we are under contract with someone and they close, they need to get put on a smart plan. You need to be consistently reaching back out to them to remind them that you're here, because most agents don't stay in touch with their clients and then they move on to somebody else. So how do we do that? You know, handwritten notes. We haven't even gotten to that section here. Is it in here? That we should be doing adding 10, having 10 conversations a day, adding 10 people to your database, 10 handwritten notes a day, and previewing 10 homes every week. That doesn't go away once we get to this. We're on the running side of our business. We still do that. We can't forget to grow our business. We continue to grow our business by staying in relationship and communication with our past clients. And there are some really easy ways to do that. Like you put a buyer in a house and you send them an anniversary card every year on their home anniversary. Hey, I can't believe it's been 4 years. You're reminding them that you care. You're texting them on their birthdays. You're getting their birthdays at closing and you're sending them birthday cards. I send birthday cards with scratch tickets in it every year for my clients. It's an easy way for me to stay in touch with them. Then they see me on Facebook. Then they get a handwritten note. Then I provide value by giving them a pertinent piece of information. Then they get a holiday card. Then they get a call from me. Then they get a Facebook message from me. I'm reminding them. That's how we get repeat and referral business. Oh, and by the way, since I'm friends on Facebook, I'm putting a picture of me closing with somebody. I'm not throwing up real estate on them on my Facebook page every day. I'm sprinkling it in so that they can see my success and be happy about my success and know I care by all the other things that I'm doing with them. Maybe I have a vendor list that I put in my buyer packets or my seller packets so that I'm the source of the source for things that they need. Maybe I have a vendor list that's I can give to them when I'm on Facebook and I see that somebody needs a painter or somebody needs an electrician. I'm on there and I see that they need this and I'm Facebook messaging them. Saw your post that you need a plumber. Here's a great guy that I've used in my own home. Congratulations, your daughter's graduating from high school. You must be so excited. Be a part of their life. You will get repeat and referral business. Plan a closing gift. This is a unique industry where we do the work and we give the gifts. Spend the money. Spend it. Whether, and this, I'm going to just put it out there because the question always comes up, can I write it off? I am not a tax person. Consult with your CPA. Even if you can't write it off, spend it anyway. It comes back to you. If I get a referral from somebody, I automatically, as soon as I get the referral, I send them a gift card. I have a stack of them because I try to give one that I think is going to be pertinent to their life.
If anybody's ever seen the show, I'm trying to remember what it's on, what network it's on. It's certainly streaming. Maybe it's Netflix. I'm probably wrong. Maybe it's Hulu. It's called, pardon my French, Schitt's Creek. If you haven't seen it, it's amazing. And there's a whole scene between the father and the son about writing stuff off. I'll just write it off. Well, who pays for it? It doesn't get paid for. It just gets written off. It's awesome. I think they did it years ago in Seinfeld too. Yeah. Just gets written off.
Just gets written off. Yeah, just spend it. Just write it off. Someone will pay for it. But you know what, guys? Gifts work. They really work. I had a client who is somebody that I get a lot of referrals from. And when they called us to list their home, I asked, well, who did you use when you bought it? And they told me, and it was an agent that I know very well. And I asked, I can very direct. I'm like, well, why didn't you call her? Well, when we bought the home, she didn't give us a closing gift. I said, but did she do a good job? Yep, but I didn't get a gift. They didn't call her because she didn't buy them a closing gift. Buy the gift. It's just expected. If I, and it could be something as simple as, somebody referred somebody to me and it didn't work out, I still send the referral card with a gift card. Thank you, a latte. I appreciate the referral. Then when they close, I buy them another gift. If they referred them to me, whether it's a crappy referral or an awesome referral, they get a gift and a thank you card immediately. Then I keep them informed throughout the transaction of how things are going. And then when that closes, they get $100 gift from me because I am that grateful. I would much rather spend $100 that I can't write off to give them a gift than give Zillow $1 for a very expensive lead that I will probably have a harder time getting. So spend the money. And that's true too if you get a referral from another agent. Give them a card, gift card. Thank you for the referral. You'll get more of them. I have a husband and wife that both refer us, and I have the same size card for those. Thank you for the referral. It says thank you for the referral on it. It's a bigger card, and they know when it comes in the mail that it's going to be for them. And if it's for him, it's a Titleist gift card, and if it's for her, it's a liquor store gift card. So
If it's
those
for me,
things
it's
really do
both,
work.
by the way. If anybody's taking notes at
Either
home,
one.
I will take scotch and golf balls, by the way. Yes.
Either one will work. But client referrals are so powerful. And definitely they like to be gifted for stuff like that. Because guess what? They'll refer again if you do that. And once you figure out who those people are that refer, you focus on them. And you'll know that even by going on Facebook. If there are certain people in your newsfeed that somebody will say, I'm looking for a great restaurant that can cater a birthday party. And there's somebody in your friend that will always respond to stuff like that. That's somebody that refers. You need to be meeting them for lunch and letting them know about your business because they'll refer you too. If they are somebody that will refer for other things, they'll refer for real estate. So that's lead generation, guys. It doesn't always have to be cold calling. Okay. Who are the multipliers in your life, in your social networks that can help you with getting repeat business and referrals? And then take very good care of them with authenticity. Okay. Command transaction management. So we did talk about checklists. Checklists work, for the record, they do. And for command transaction management, that is the opportunity. So you have to start back at the beginning and make sure that you have them in there as a contact. Good information, all complete information on all the decision makers in command, in their contacts. And then when you get to the contract to close piece, you're creating an opportunity. And you're using the documents checklist for that. But you can create custom guides and checklists in command. You can go to designs and create those. Okay. And then when you think of something that, with the best practices, you can change up your checklists and your guides so that you're constantly making the experience that you provide better. And one of the reasons we do the checklist is because we think we're going to remember and we don't, and we can't miss deadlines and we can't miss communication plots along the way. We have to make sure that we're getting them. Okay. One of the great things about Keller Williams is people share information. And if you're having a challenge with your checklists, go to your Market Center's Facebook page, buy an agent a cup of coffee and ask them about their checklists. People here are really good about sharing information. It's really unique brokerage to be a part of a Keller Williams brokerage that you have that. You will not get that in other agencies. We really are the best agency to be with. We care about each other as much as we care about our clients. And that's important. So you can do a customized checklist. I'm not going to have everybody log into their command now. But once you go to opportunities, which is the shaking hands thing, you select under contract for either listings or buyers, and it will give you the right checklist. Okay. And then you're moving them through the different stages of the under contract so that you know where they are. This part is probably sounding a little foreign to you, but you can create a test opportunity, and I would encourage you to do that so that you can see and move a test transaction through the process and see what that looks like, so that when you are doing it for, live for the first contract, it's not a complete surprise to you. It won't take you as long, and you'll have a better chance of a better idea of what you're going to be having to look for. It might help you with what contracts you should be looking at. Okay. And the same thing for your consumer guides. So that information is in command. If you need additional command help, the Marty Miller challenges for command, they're short, they're fast. Move through them. He'll hit on the consumer guides, the buyer guides, the seller guides, the checklists, the opportunities. And they're like 5-10 minute activities that you can do every day in his 66-day challenge on YouTube. Okay. So as we're nearing the end a little bit, what does anyone have? Has anything resonated with you today, or are you thinking differently about anything? Anything that is an aha for somebody? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I would like you to be on the other side of every transaction that is in my future, because I know you'll be a safety net, and if I can't cover it, you will.
Well, I'll tell you what, you definitely get to the closing table. Thank you. It's important. We had to win together, people.
Yeah, he's not here, so I'll pick on him because it's fun to pick on him. John Kenyon has done more real estate since Sue started doing the real estate for their team. Yeah. The reason for Sue.
We have different strengths, that's for sure.
Is that what we're calling it?
He can lead generate like nobody's business, but
Yep.
That's true.
He's super Ken. Yes, he's good with the scripts. He gets on the phone. He gets the meat. She cooks the burgers. Yes. Yes. Yep.
Oh, goodness. Well, for me, the setting the expectations is really important. If we set the clear expectations, it's easier to meet them when we know what they are. The hardest thing is you can't meet someone's expectations when you don't ask what they're expecting of you. And if they're expecting something here and you're here and you think you're knocking it out of the park and they're disappointed, that repeat and referral business is so hard to go after. Right? When we're talking about the expectations thing too, it's important that they know what they can expect from you and what might be off limits. Like there are family times that might be off limits. Like, don't call me on Sunday or text me on Sunday morning if I'm going to be at church. And that has happened where we would have someone texting and we're like, look at, dude, we're going to church on Sunday mornings. I'm never going to respond to you on Sunday mornings. If I didn't let him know that, he would just continue to be disappointed. But the very first time we got a text on a Sunday morning, we let them know. You know what? I appreciate that you text, and I really always want to be responding to texts very promptly. That being said, I'm never going to be able to respond to them on a Sunday morning because of this. Or what is it in your life that is a time that, is off limits? Okay. So we're going to move right along to daily success habits. And here's our slide that we've been missing. After we're done with Ignite, today's the last session. I think is there something tomorrow? Maybe a market center specific something?
No, in the past we've maybe done like a tech thing, but we're not doing it this month, I don't believe. So no,
Okay.
Ignite will be back in January.
Okay. So that being said, we still have to have these goals, right? We have to have contacts added every day to our database. Your business will grow to the extent that you do. If you back off on this, then your business will back off. If you want to, do you want to make money next year? This is where you go, yes, Susan, I want to make money next year. You need to be adding contacts to your database. It's not going to happen on its own. It will not happen on its own. You must do the work if you want the pay. So add contacts to your database every day. Have conversations every day. 10, and the number's 10. The math does not lie, and the number is 10. 10 contacts added a day, 10 conversations a day, 10 handwritten notes. So much power in a handwritten note. And what are we writing handwritten notes on? There's so many options, right? If you're on social media for lead generation, then lead generate. Your handwritten notes, you could get 10 within an hour being on Facebook between, you know, people that, oh, I just got COVID. Then you send a note, I hope you feel better. Oh, somebody in their life passed away. Then you send a sympathy card. Somebody just got a new job. You send a congratulations card. Someone just had a baby. You send a new baby card. You saw somebody post that hasn't posted in a very long time. Just saw you post and I haven't talked to you in a while. Wanted to send you a card to say I'm thinking about you. It's not difficult. You had a conversation with someone. Follow it up with a card. They will love that. Handwritten. Great catching up with you today. Please let me know if I can ever help. Loved our conversation about the cost of food. I don't know. And here's a great article on how to save money at the grocery store. I don't know. Figure it out. Get creative, but you got to do it. You have to preview homes digitally, going through listings, in person, going to open houses. And remember, we talked about open houses if we are going to them. We're not speaking to the other people there. We're not speaking to buyers there. They are leads for the hosting agent, but we can preview the home. It's important that we're previewing homes. Offer to tag team on and see if you can get on some home inspections. Learn about properties. Okay, but the number's 10, so we don't back off of this just because this is the last session of Ignite.
Susan,
Hi,
can I jump in with an open house thing?
please do.
Bring somebody with you, or if you're out cruising around and you pass by an open house, doesn't matter if it's your brokerage or not, swing by. That agent might need somebody there, or maybe just a cup of coffee would make their entire day. Stay clear of any buyers in there, but it's a great thing to stop by and just say, hey, I've been wanting to meet you and I saw your sign, and light, gentle, in and out. They might say to you, would you be okay staying for a few minutes? I'm uncomfortable with somebody here. It happens.
It does. Thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. And you're building co-broke relationships. Look at that.
Absolutely.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a good point to bring up. And so we're not going to do scripts together here, but we do script practice because you should not be practicing on your customers and your clients. It's important that we practice with each other so that we're not practicing on the people that we would like to transact with. Okay. And then get some good one-liners. And if you need to, tape them all around your desk. Things like, what about that is important to you? You know, maybe you're talking to a seller and they're like on the fence. What is your biggest fear in listing your house now? We're coming into a season where people are thinking about this. The holidays are here. And once January 1 hits, people have goals for buying and selling. We need to be asking about them now. You know, learn about their life situations and then have a script around that. I'd be happy to show you how we have helped people in a similar situation. I'm available today. I'm available tomorrow at 3 or Friday at 4. And remember, when we're talking to people, we script so that we don't use acronyms. You know, the FSBO and the KWCLM ampersand M mountains. I don't know, whatever we are right now. So we script so that we're not using industry language on our customers and our clients. We script because it builds confidence. And for us, we need that. We need to be confident when we're getting on the phone. So the more you script, the less you have to think about what you have to say. And the less you have to think about what you're going to say next, the bigger opportunity you have to listen. And people know when you're not listening. They can feel it in the conversation when you're not listening. Okay.
People
So
want two things. They want to feel heard and cared for, right?
Yeah, they do.
We talk about it all the time, and I know everybody's like, well, I mean, what do you always hear, Susan? Well, I don't, and especially for you and John with your team, because you beat it into the kids on your team, of course, not physically. Yeah, you got to just know the scripts, and people are like, well, I don't want to sound scripted. Well, you're going to sound scripted until you learn the scripts, right? I always ask this question. Think about your favorite movie. Whatever your favorite movie is, they internalize and emotionalize those words so they can exercise them, so they can take you to a different place. Right? You're sitting there watching the movie, and I'll pick on Tom Hanks. When you're watching any Tom Hanks movie, he is whatever his character is. You forget who Tom Hanks is. He becomes his character. Great actors do it all the time. So if you logistically think about where every movie starts logistically, I don't want to pick on Sarah Cosby because she's at a great table. It's at a table like hers with a bunch of people reading written word for the first time. And then Sarah dives into her script. Shelley dives into her script. And then suddenly they're on set and they're creating this thing that transports you to an emotional place when you're watching it. They don't sound scripted anymore. You forget they ever read a script. So if you don't think that you want to use scripts, everyone at our market centers, everyone at our company, Gary included, uses scripts.
Yep.
Right?
It can seem awkward and uncomfortable at first, but it's necessary, and every team is different. But if you're a scripting person, then we are a team for you. If you don't want to script and don't want to get on the phone, we are not a team for you. And we're very transparent about that. You must be able to get through conversations, and you have to get on the phone to do that.
If you don't want to learn the language of sales, said with love, get over it. Or head over to Kohl's because they need help. Their sweaters are a mess. I was there last night, Go full t-shirts and sweaters. Or lean into the scripts. And the next thing you know, you'll have no paperwork in front of you. And as you move through everything, it's getting from I got off the phone and I had all the scripts in front of me on the phone, and I got to the kitchen table. And the fear is, well, God, I can't bring the scripts to the kitchen table. Not really, but what do you need at the kitchen table? You're bringing all the paperwork. The conversation is going to lend itself. You just got to ask questions. It's about asking questions. Everything we're doing is we're peeling the onion to help uncover their motivation, not give them their motivation. Find out what their motivation is.
Yep. And we're doing it to be transparent, because we care.
Jason Abrams said the greatest script is the Adele script, right? Hello? Honestly, just start being a human. Talk to the humans.
Right?
It's not like, who do you know that wants to buy, sell, or invest in it? Nobody wants to hear that. No. That's terrible. If you call your mom with that script, she's never going to take your call again.
Right? Yeah.
She'll have her number changed, and she should. Because pardon my French, that sucks. Yeah. Right? Make them feel heard and cared for. Call them and ask them about their favorite subject. Them. How are you? How's the family? Who do you know that I can help?
Yep. If you don't ask for the business, it's not going to just come to you. It is a sales job. You have to ask for the business. Okay. And I would be remiss if I did not remind you, you may not call people on the do not call list. Please, please don't do it. Huge fines.
Oh, you're allowed to call them. You shouldn't call them.
Shouldn't call them.
Yeah, there is no fence around people on the do not call list. You should. Yes, it's going to cost you. Nathan will remind you. It's a $42,000 per violation. So if you're feeling dangerous and you start calling a whole bunch of people on the do not call list, that could be a very expensive day. So that's why the benefit is most people in your phone that you already have a relationship with, even if they're on the do not call list, that's for the person that they don't know, that they don't want to talk to. But when you call and ask them about them, and then eventually they say, hey, Timmy, how's real estate? I'm glad you asked. Me and my team had a goal. We wanted to help 48 families this year. We've got 12 more families that we need to be in a relationship before the end of the year. Who do you know, Shelley, that I should know? Who do you know that I can serve?
Yep.
And then do what I never do. Let the silence do the heavy lifting, right? And let them think about who they might know. And if they don't, that's okay. But you've got to end every engagement with asking your loved ones, who are their loved ones? We talk all the time about, well, I've got all these names on my phone, Timmy. I've got a huge sphere of influence. No, you've got a huge sphere, because not everybody in your phone said with love. Your Aunt Margaret that only talks to her cat, she's not influential. She talks to her cat. She's in your sphere, but she's not influential. So growing our sphere of influence within our sphere is important.
Yep, absolutely. And your script, if you do call somebody on the do not call list, is I'm so sorry. Let me take you off this list. I hope you have a wonderful day. Right? There's a lot of power in I'm sorry. I'm putting my contact information in the chat again. So if anyone needs anything, you can certainly reach out to me.
And please check with your individual market centers. They should all have, not should have, they will have advice, they'll be able to advise you and guide you on the access that maybe your individual market centers have for do not call. But it's donotcall.gov, and go there and familiarize yourself with it. And to Sue's point, when somebody says I'm on the do not call list, it's not a time to argue or get into a verbal arm wrestling match. Just thank them for their time, wish them well, happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas.
Yep.
Peace out. Have a great day. I'll take you off my list. I'll update the notes.
Yep, absolutely. And we like to end on the create your success list. I am a checklist person. I keep my handy dandy notebook here. I have this on me all the time, and there's my checklist here already written out for today after this class. Write down my must do's. Even though I do use my database for my calls and stuff like that, there's that list of stuff that you always have ongoing, that sometimes I'm moving it from today to tomorrow if it didn't get done, but it helps me to stay focused and organized. So I definitely am an advocate for that, but find out what works for you. If it's digital, then do digital. If it's a notebook, then go old school and hand write it down. For me, it's the act of writing it sometimes that actually like lands it for that I have to get it done. But do your checklist for processes, for contract to close, and your daily success list for getting your stuff done every day. You guys can do this. I have so much confidence in you. So keep on making your calls, getting appointments. Just start with the very next call and ask for the business, ask for the appointment, even if it's just to network. Get used to speaking to people about real estate. And then be on purpose about your goal. If you have a 30-minute conversation and you didn't ask for the appointment, pick up the phone and call them back. Say, you know what I didn't do is set up a time for us to get together for a beer. Get the appointment. Get used to setting the appointment, and then let your business grow. But be on purpose about it. I hope that you all got something out of today. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. I think that's a wrap for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody else might have.
And I know, guys,
okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to remind you guys that Mo Anderson was going to be on at 10:30. They moved it to 12. So there should be a link available for KWNE with Mo is coming on at 12 o'clock. Go ahead, Andy.
I get this calendar from my market center on Sunday evening for the next week. And there is Ignite still scheduled for tomorrow at 9. So is there Ignite tomorrow or isn't it?
No, this is session 18. I'm pretty sure it's wrapped.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Cool. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're
Sue.
welcome. You're
Take
welcome.
care, guys.
Thank you, guys.